6:30. I have a guest here this evening, Chief LaChance. Mind coming forward to the podium? Jim. Thanks, Chief, for coming out tonight. I hope you didn't get wet coming in.
Nope, it was nice and dry, so thank you for having me.
I've got two motions that I'd like you to speak to tonight.
Yep.
One, the first one being the maintenance part of the vehicles at
Vehicle maintenance and
90,000.
major vehicle repairs.
And the second one is the two cruisers, or the two cars,
Yep.
you and the
So
deputy.
the vehicle maintenance and the major vehicle repairs, those two counts are somewhat related. Frequently I have to ask the city auditor what's really the difference between the two, but there's
is
kind of a
this-
fine line. So as a general rule, if it's a major overhaul, we use the major vehicle repairs, and in theory, the vehicle maintenance is for the more routine things, but there is some overlap. So we've exhausted pretty much all of our funding for vehicle maintenance and repairs this year. If you recall, at the budget presentation in May, there was talk about a fire department mechanic. I've been the chief for 13 years. I don't expect it before I retire. There's just too many problems with it. We don't have the spot for it at the fire station. I used to have two mechanics when I first became chief. They were not certified. It's an OSHA disaster waiting to happen. We don't have appropriate lifts, so we were doing all kinds of things that are not safe for a city to do. Today on emergency vehicles, if you're not certified and you do repairs, and something happens and goes wrong, there's massive liability for the city. So today, everything has to be emergency certified technicians and mechanics. It's not the days of just having somebody do it. So it's always been a goal, since I had two mechanics many years ago. We laid one off, the other one retired, but they weren't really able to do the types of repairs that we need because, honestly, they're not trained for it. The next part of the problem is that, like I said, we don't have any space. So we don't have any lift space. I had hoped when the DPW building was built, I was pushing for that to have a bay for apparatus maintenance, and we would do it off-site. There was really no interest in it at the time. This is going back 13 years ago now. So we've been doing the same exact thing for the last 13 years, which is fixing all of our apparatus by putting Band-Aids on it and hoping for the best. So I have an officer who comes in on overtime to coordinate it and schedule it. We send virtually everything out other than really small repairs. But when we send it out, it's a lot of effort because two people have to drive. Somebody has to drive back. The trucks are out of service for months. Ladder 2 has been out of service for almost 3 months. It needs $35,000 in repairs to be fixed. It needs a lot of work on the aerial system. It needs a lot of work on the outriggers, hydraulics, electronics. These are all built-in safety features, so we can't use the truck if the safety features are not working. And there's certain electronic features that will tell you that the aerial is not set, locked, safe to use. We can't troubleshoot that. I mean, it's going to take them, honestly, weeks and months to fix it. So we've allocated the funds for that, but by allocating the $35,000 for that in purchase orders, we've got virtually nothing left. One of my fire engines, which is out of South Attleboro, engine 2, it's only about 3 years old, needs a new head gasket. $8,100, be out of service for a month. And so now what I'm looking at is virtually no money left in those two accounts, and I can't wait until something goes wrong and then come ask for the money when it happens. I have to have funds in place so that when things come up, we can actually get the truck fixed. So that funding request was to replenish the money for the ladder truck and the head gasket, and to put some funds aside to hopefully get us through, the next 5 months of the fiscal year.
You must be affected by the new electronics and everything in these vehicles that we used to be able to do a lot of work in-house. It's almost
The other thing that's killing us
it's almost impossible to do.
It is, and the other thing that's really terrible is the DEF system, the diesel exhaust fluid system for the emissions, which I'm an advocate for emissions, but I'm also a realist, and I don't think emissions, that kind of stuff, belongs on fire apparatus because we've had nothing but problems with them. There are parts of that system that the manufacturer tells us when we buy the truck that's going to last 2 years, and when you need to replace it, it's $20,000, and that's not budgeted for. So these trucks do something called regenerative cycle, so that they go out on a call, we come back, and sometimes there's this light flashing that says regenerate. You can't use the truck unless you can override it in an emergency, but basically the truck has to sit there idling out on the front apron for like 30 minutes for all of that stuff to get burned off. We're spending a ton of money on the new type of fluid that we didn't have to use before, that we're using it by probably hundreds of gallons a year. So that's another problem with the maintenance is that stuff. And we can't touch any of that. It voids the warranty. So that has to go out to the manufacturer. So we have two problems. Is we should have a mechanic, or there should be something in place. Like, I'm an advocate for a city maintenance division. I think it's long overdue, with professional mechanics and stuff that can actually, so that I could just send the trucks there and know that somebody's be treating us honestly. But that's above my pay grade.
I don't think you're alone with that, because I think there's people on this council think we should have a city garage, so, you can use it, the park department, whatever, and run it as a repair facility. So we're big enough now, and there's enough equipment out there that I think that's something for the future to look at. First to my committees. Anybody on my committee have any questions for the chief?
Chief, thank you.
Go ahead.
One question for you. So you mentioned there was one, is it a ladder truck that is currently facing about $35,000 in repairs and is expected to be out of service for some time. Are the funds that you're requesting tonight going to that, or?
It's going to replace those funds.
Okay, so those funds have been used and it's going to replenish.
The purchase orders have been in.
Okay.
We haven't spent them yet because
Yes.
we're waiting for them to actually fix the truck. But once
Okay.
it's encumbered, to me, it's the same as it's gone. So I need that money back so that my account doesn't show zero, so that if something else happens.
Yes, that way you have some kind of an operating account
have an
for
operating
other
account.
expenses. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect,
And I
thank
understand
you.
with the council, when those are votes, there's, city auditor always reminds me that that's not money I can transfer to other accounts. Sometimes you get to the end of the fiscal year and you forget that, and she always looks at that with a council vote to replace the money for that. So I'm not looking to build up any accounts unnecessarily. I just want to make sure we have the money so that 10 grand for a repair is very easy to come by today. So it doesn't take a lot of them for us to.
Sure.
I don't want to shut you off, but this guy over here only give me 10 minutes.
Okay, no problem. I'm sorry.
It's the worst.
Sarah, do you have any other
I have
questions?
none, no. I do
You all
not.
set,
No, I
Ms.
am,
Brennan?
thank you.
Thank you.
Any of the other councilors have any questions for him? Yes, Michael?
One quick one. One of the issues is the depth for the diesel trucks?
That's a part of the
Yeah.
expensive maintenance cost, yeah.
And you, I know you can delete them, but then, like you said, it's gonna kill your warranty.
Right, and then electronics is the other big issue too.
Hearing no more questions, all in favor of this motion?
I think you need to read it first.
Oh, I thought I read it. See that? You should have been out here prompting me. I entertain a motion to appropriate $90,000 from account 1000-359000, undesignated fund balance free cash general government to the following. $30,000 to account 12201-000-524230, fire department vehicle maintenance, and $60,000 to account 12200-52460, fire department major repairs. Have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Sarah. Hearing no other questions for the chief, I bring it to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes, thank you. Secondly, Chief, I have another motion this evening for $108,000 for, let me read the motion and I won't have to go through it again. I entertain a motion to appropriate $108,137.80 from account 100035900, undesignated fund balance free cash general government, to account 12201-000-587034 fire SUV to purchase two 2023 hybrid Ford utility interceptor vehicles with the required accessories. these particular vehicles are not available in a reasonable time frame, June 15th, 2023, we will seek to find similarly qualified replacements.
Second.
Thank you. I'm going to let the chief explain this. These, other than they're dressed up with equipment and something, are the basic vehicles that we just approved for the health department. So they are available, I understand.
Yep.
Any questions for my committee first? Yes,
I only
Sarah.
have one question. So this is before they're equipped with all the...
Nope, that's
everything?
That's everything.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. If I could just explain, probably 7 or 8 years ago, as part of the capital improvements plan, if you haven't seen the fire department one, I would encourage you to look at the plan. As the vehicles are not under the fire department, they're under the general city for those vehicles. But what we had done historically when I first became chief is every time one of our cars would break down. So when I look at my command staff, I have 7 vehicles for people who work days. Some of them are take-home vehicles, like my fire inspector. He gets called out for fires. I take my car home, the assistant chief does. But generally speaking, those cars are used by people who are Monday through Friday, but they do respond to emergencies. So, and when we have snowstorms and blizzards, and the administrative people are not doing their administrative jobs, I take those cars away from everybody, and we put them in service for the storms with extra firefighters in them to get to people's houses. You'll see them in a snowstorm going to every call before the fire engine, because sometimes, or the ambulance, because sometimes we'll actually shovel a person's driveway, we'll plow a driveway, we'll shovel a sidewalk to get to the patient. So we found it was much better to use those vehicles because they're four-wheel drive and kind of have them spread throughout the city for storms. So that's the concept behind why we want four-wheel drives. Plus, they're not very expensive compared to a regular car today. In the plan, what I looked at was historically what we would do. When I became chief, I took the old chief's car. I'm not a car guy. All I know is a hot rod. It was not a fire vehicle. That was the car I had. It was purple. It was a hot rod. It could go like 600 miles an hour. But it was old. And when that car broke down, what I got was a hand-me-down from the fire department, the police department, that was already junk, that was not good enough for an emergency vehicle. And that's historically what we've done. We've taken things from the police department, spent $5,000 to fix them, and then all we have is a car that's not reliable. So what we came up with for a plan is I looked at the cars we need for my administrative staff, and we came up with a plan to buy one vehicle new every year. And what I would do with that is, and my assistant chief and myself will look at these cars now, and in a perfect world, if we were caught up when the new vehicle got purchased, if it was time for me to replace mine, my car gets handed down to one of the inspectors or my fire prevention chief or somebody. This assistant chief's car gets replaced, we're doing the same thing. So we came up with a plan so that my car, the assistant chief's car, and my shift commanders, the 3 primary response vehicles, would never be more than 3 years old. My fire alarm superintendent, my fire inspector, my EMS chief, and my fire prevention chief, their cars would never be more than 7 years old. And as we went through that process, I'd be taking a 7-year-old car that had been maintained by us and now using it as a staff car, because I send guys to the fire academy, I send people to paramedic school, and right now they're in a car that is 20 years old. And it's kind of unreliable. It's not 4-wheel drive, it's 2-wheel drive. It's one of the old Crown Victorias, and we're spending boatloads of money on them. So this plan was, I won't say approved by the council, but it's been in the capital improvement plan for years. We didn't buy a car last year. For whatever reason, it just never came to the council. So we're just 2 years behind. That's why they asked for 2 vehicles this year, because the last one we bought was 2021. So if we got the 2 this year, we won't, in 2024, we'll be looking for another vehicle for the same reason, to keep passing them down. Fire vehicles, the rest of the city can't use them, because although we're getting hybrids, so I guess technically they can, but I know with the former mayor's plan for the green initiative, I think there's some restrictions on the vehicles, because we don't actually even have to buy a hybrid. So if we can't get one, I won't. I mean, I prefer to get one just to be consistent with what we're doing, but if they say they don't have them, we'll get whatever they have that's available. So that's the short answer.
Councilor Bennett, do you have any questions for the chief on those 2 cars?
No additional questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, thank you. I do support this, and so are these 2 vehicles replacing, are you going to take 2 out of commission, or are these going to be in addition?
We're going to, well, what we'll take out of commission, what the cars that will be removed from service is going to be a 2003 Crown Victoria and a 2006 Ford Expedition. That's what we'll take out of service by putting the newer vehicles up top and shifting the other ones, you know, towards the other employees.
And so the last time we bought SUV was 2021?
2021 Ford Explorer.
Thank you.
Very good.
I knew I remembered. I thought I was crazy, but...
Yes, Mr. Conti.
So Chief, following Councilor Dolan's thinking, you're retiring two 20-year-old cars. You're moving your new cars down the line. 7 years is where your staff are. You get two new cars, then your staff cars will be 8 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there won't be a vehicle in the department that's used for personnel transportation that is older than 8 years old.
Yeah, I mean, worst case, 9 or 10, but yeah, that's the goal is, and have a reasonable amount of mileage, you know, have 50, 75,000 miles on it as opposed to, you know, 150.
So going forward, next year, when you come for a new car, the plan will be to deaccession one of the old,
Yep.
then 9-year-old car
Yes.
available to any department in the city
Yep.
before it is turned in or
Correct.
traded in.
And honestly, they'll be in pretty decent shape for the general use of the city at that point, because they'll be 9 or 10 years old, worst case, 8 or 9 years old, and well-maintained. So that is the theory behind the plan.
Any other questions from my fellow councilors? Hearing none? Move for a vote.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thanks, have a
I
good night.
appreciate you coming out.
Thank you very much.
I'll
Good night.
bring these forward to the full council.
So I will call the License Committee together.
Move to adjourn?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'd like to move to adjourn at 6:47.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Excuse me for a couple minutes, you can carry on, I gotta go get my ears, it's hard for me to hear.
All right, I'll call the License Committee together at 6:47. And we have Councilor DeSimone and Councilor Dolan with us. We only have one item of business today. At the top of our page from the docket of January 17th, 2023, I would entertain a motion to approve an automatic amusement device license renewal for Junior's Bar and Grill on Pine Street with one pool table.
Second.
Thank you. I was there about 10 days ago, I guess, and pool table's there. Everything's fine. No issues that I can see at all. This is simply a renewal. Are there any questions? All right. Well, then I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Vote passes 3-0. I will call for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Thank you.
I just have a question.
Motion to
With-
adjourn. Pardon?
Before you fully adjourn,
Oh.
you're not bringing out the second motion?
I already did that.
So that's an
I did
error.
that last week.
All right, thank you.
Yes, we're all set with that. That motion passed 3-0 last week. She's referring to the amusement device license at Market Basket. So we have a motion to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 6:49. Thank you.
I'd like to call Zoning and Land Use Committee to order at 6:49. I just have one motion this evening. In the docket of December 20th, 2022, I entertain a motion to approve $35,000 from account 10003590000 undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account 117510005300178 planning and land use zoning consultant.
Second.
Thank you. So last week, we did have Mr. Gary Rajan here to talk about this. There was some confusion about whether it was in finance or in my committee, but he was able to speak to it and answered some questions about that. Did anyone else have any other? It kind of sounds like this is what's needed to kind of help the city along with planning, and they feel like it can offer some skill set that they could benefit from. So I do feel like it's money well spent. Any other comments or?
No.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. That's all for this evening. I'll call for an adjournment.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:50.
Outstanding. And then we will get started with the full council meeting at 7 o'clock, 10 minutes.
So, I'm sorry, so the three of us are together now? Okay.
The municipal council will now come to order. Please all stand and join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For everyone's information, this meeting is being recorded, and please silence your cell phones. All right. We will start with the joint public hearings. Clerk, can you read the notice for the first public hearing? And if we can get the planning board to join us.
Is there a syllabus?
Yes. And for the record, Councilor Bennett will be recusing herself from this meeting.
You have to go over there and get it, sir.
Are they outside in the hallway?
There's a thing
Sir,
against
we're
the
in the middle of a meeting.
It's my first time. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. God bless you, sir. Just give the planning board a second to get in here. Welcome.
First public hearing for this evening, joint public hearing with the Planning Board for the proposed amendments to Section 17, Table of Use Regulations and Definitions as it pertains to marijuana, proposed amendments available at the council office.
Thank you. Is there anyone to speak in favor? Please state your name and address for the record.
Peter D'Agostino with 10X Strategies, Boston, Massachusetts.
Thank you.
And I'm here representing Marcia Testa, who is a woman-owned business seeking to locate a cannabis business here in the city. So the council is aware. I've appeared before the council on several occasions over the years for cannabis zoning, so I appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight. Mr. Chairman, I guess, or Mr. President, are we speaking to both the general business zoning and the overlay district?
We are, and actually, thank you for the question. There are, the main business before the council is the business that was before us previously, that we had the joint public hearing for, that we have the planning board's recommendation, and that's to allow marijuana retailers in general business and planned highway business. So we're here to have that public hearing again because we've gone beyond the 90 days, which is required according to Mass General Law, to act on a change to the zoning ordinance. So we're here to discuss that business again, but there's also a motion to, there's a proposed amendment that was discussed in the ordinance committee that was introduced by Councilor DeSimone and Councilor Reynolds to modify that to be a marijuana overlay district. And because that's been read into the record, it's part of the public record, we're here to discuss both options. And when people come to speak before us in favor, one of the things that I intend to ask is if you're in favor of the previous business or general business, planned highway business, or the overlay district, or both. For anyone that speaks in opposition, my assumption is that they oppose both options. Is that clear? Does anybody have questions procedurally? Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. President.
Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you. I just want to make sure I was speaking to the right matter. So generally, we support the general business district change that was proposed in the original business. But I did monitor the committee's hearings and meetings over time, so I understand there was some discussion around the idea of an overlay district. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. I think the committee spent an incredible amount of time, had a lot of public discussion about it. I would just say we support that. And then I'd like to speak more to the idea of an overlay district, if I could. I will say that I've spent years in Attleboro doing cannabis business. We've permitted other businesses here. We've worked on the zoning in all 3 iterations, this being the 3rd. I think the net effect of an overlay district, if it's expanded beyond just 2 parcels, and a general zoning of the general business district, I think the net effect actually isn't different, to be candid with you. And I think the reason that it's not necessarily different is the availability of property, where these can go, the business decisions that would go into picking the areas, as well as the special permit process. I think the output of that, whether we start with saying the whole zone's open or we start with an overlay district, I think the net effect of it isn't much different, quite frankly. But how you get there is significantly different, right? Because if we only have 2 parcels, that would be challenging. That being said, I just offer the council, the council as a whole, to consider that, would people really go to these places we're concerned about? But a good way to address that and take it off the table is to do an overlay district. We reviewed the 2 parcels that were proposed. I know during the public meeting last week, there was some discussion that other parcels may get added through the process of committee and by other councilors. The challenge we have with these 2 parcels specifically is that neither parcel is currently available. One of the parcel up north by North Attleboro is for sale, but there's a 15-year lease in place, and the business that's there is not leaving. So if you buy that parcel, you have to assume the lease. So that parcel wouldn't be available. I spoke to the broker this morning to confirm that that's still the case. So that wouldn't be available as a potential use. The parcel in the south is 1000 Washington Street. Just for full disclosure to council, we had that under an agreement about a year ago. We evaluated it for cannabis for about 2 months, and we decided it didn't work for cannabis for a variety of reasons. If the council is interested why, I'm happy to answer that question, but I don't want to take a lot of your time on it. But we evaluated it for about 2 months and decided that parcel wasn't suitable for cannabis. However, that parcel is also not available. I spoke to the owner. Actually, my client spoke to the owner. I didn't speak to him directly, and that parcel is also under agreement. So those parcels, zoning those parcels wouldn't have the effect of actually changing anything, unless the 1000 Washington Street is a cannabis business. I don't know that personally for sure. So I'd ask the council to consider that, really going through this whole process and picking those 2 wouldn't actually create any opportunity because they're both not available and they're both under current agreement. So I don't suspect that's going to change anytime soon. The other thing that we learned about these properties is that neither of them comply with the current buffer requirements in the zoning ordinance. So the Friendlies, the parcel to the north, the way your zoning is written currently, it has to be from the building to the property, to the zone or use for residential. So it's both. It's either a residential zone or a residential use. As you know, in Attleboro, there are some residential uses that are no longer in residential zones. That building is 58 feet. I brought the GIS data if anybody wants to see it. It's 58 feet from a residential zone. So that wouldn't be available without a change. The 1000 Washington Street could comply, but not in the way that the committee's considering approving it. So it is also 58 feet from the residence right behind it. The current requirement's 100 feet. Now, your zoning ordinance requires that it's from the building, and as many of you may know, 1000 Washington Street doesn't have a building. What's contemplated in the approval is that you're going to approve the entire parcel. So without further defining that, a building could be placed on that parcel in such a way that it would be closer than 100 feet to residential, because we don't have a building to measure from. When I came up with the 58 feet on 1000 Washington Street, I included a setback, assuming if they built a building, they would have to set it back from the property line. So that 58 feet isn't to the property line, that's inclusive of a setback. And I actually used an old building that used to be on the parcel as an example of where that building may be able to go. So there's a couple of challenges. Those aren't commercially available. They're both less than 100 feet from residents, which is something I know this committee didn't have an interest in shrinking that. But 1000 Washington Street, we did evaluate it. It could be made compliant if the building was put in a certain location on the lot, because that's a fairly large lot. You could pull it to the front and to the right and it would work. I guess the point in those discussion topics is it's incredibly challenging for a committee to evaluate every facet of what could be done when the committee is only approving parcels under overlay districts. You don't know if the building's going to move, where it's going to be, how it's going to be used. And I would just offer that the committee consider expanding it to a greater subset of parcels within the area that you're still seeking. I've heard a lot of discussion that seems to be some consensus around Route 1. Obviously, you can't put 10 of them there, but there had some consensus around that. I've heard during the public meeting some discussion of Route 123. You could select areas and allow for the cannabis companies to go and do the work that would need to be done to evaluate compliance with the zoning bylaw, and of course the ZBA through their special permit process. So you may have a parcel, one that we're going to propose tonight, that your opinion may be the traffic doesn't work there. But that's really the process of the special permit. We have to start before we can finish. So I think it's challenging for the council, or for the committee rather, to say, hey, we think this works and we think everybody's okay with it. We could get into it. There could be an environmental issue. There could be an old tank. Something that we think is a traffic issue might not actually be a traffic issue. So I just offer that. And I have quite a bit of data on the two parcels you picked. If you want to get into it, I'm happy to do it. But I did want to offer one, I'm going to get to the lot that we'd like consideration on. But from an overlay district, we did participate very significantly in Natick doing their overlay district. As you know, Natick has a town meeting format. It's an elected town meeting for those of you who don't know. And so elected town meetings, individuals represent large subsets of the population, similar to a city council, but on a smaller scale, meaning there's more elected officials. And what Natick did is they knew they wanted it on Route 9, and they knew about where they wanted it, and I equate that to Route 1. And then they essentially picked every parcel that entered and exited the highway and didn't pick the next parcel behind it. So it created a greater offset from residents, because Route 9, as anybody's been through Route 9 Natick, it basically just runs through the middle of neighborhoods. Behind McDonald's is a house. So, that's just the way life is. So that's how they did it. And I brought their overlay district, if I may.
Yes.
I brought their map just for the council to look at, or to, again, you can find this yourself, certainly. But the two, I only brought one section, so they have 3 areas in Natick. This is one. So this is Route 9.
Do you have copies for the planning board?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I apologize. I did bring some for the planning board, yes. Thank you. Here, pass those down. So if you look at these two pieces of paper, and I'm going to pull them apart just to give you a visual of how this actually sits. This is Route 9 just like this. This is how it looks. Wellesley's to the left as I'm holding it, and Framingham's to the right. So this is one section of Route 9. Okay? And if you look on, a great example is on the second page here. If you look on the left side, you'll see that there's pink parcels that they didn't select. So that's just an example of what I'm talking about, where they selected just those front-facing parcels. The pink is their commercial 2 zone, but you see how they offset the lots one away from the residence, so it created a buffer. But they still selected, as you can see, all the numbers represent a parcel. So just in this section of Route 9, I don't know, looking quickly, maybe 20 parcels. So I offer this as something to consider. By picking this area, you give greater opportunity. Now, I'm going to give you the output of this very quickly, because we saw this process all the way to the end. This is what town meeting ultimately voted to approve. There were 4 cannabis companies that sought to be in this one area. All 4 went to a community outreach process, 2 of which those locations were highly contested by the neighbors, and the applicants chose not to move forward. The other two, pretty close. One leaned a little bit better than the other. Ultimately, that one got picked. So my point is, it kind of goes back to where I started. By selecting more parcels in larger areas doesn't equal more businesses in that area. There are market factors. Certainly, if anybody's paying attention to cannabis in Massachusetts, it's becoming incredibly challenging. There are market factors to consider, there's a special permit process to consider, and there's community feedback that you have to consider. So even though Natick went through all this work and did all of this and zoned all these, they ended up with one in this area. There's other areas in town that you can go as well that they put some. So I would just offer the council that even though you pick 2 or 3 and you think, well, that's really where we want it, they may not work. Just like these 2 that you picked actually aren't commercially available, and both of them shrink the residential buffer, which I don't think was the intent of the committee. So I just offer that as a consideration. I'm happy to work with any from the committee to provide additional background on how Natick's process went and so on and so forth, but what I just told you is basically how it ended up, to be candid. And then one other parcel that I have to just put on your list, Mr. President, Madam Chair, is the parcel that my client has interest in is 266 Washington Street. It's parcel, well, for the record, it's 064-081-00A. I did talk quickly to the district councilor this evening. She had some concerns around traffic. She thought the chief may have some concerns around traffic, so just full disclosure, she did tell me that that was her consideration related to that parcel. But what I will tell you is when we looked at this parcel, so I told you the 2 you selected were both 58 feet from residence. We did the GIS mapping for this parcel as well, and it is 373 feet from the closest residence, which provides significant, here's just the GIS data for the 2 parcels you picked and the parcel I'm suggesting. Thank you. 373 from the residential zone, it's about 380 or 90 feet to the house. It's significant, especially for Route 1 in Attleboro. There's some discussion on traffic. Did I pass these out? Sorry. Do you have enough? If you have extras, I just printed a bunch. There's some discussion about traffic related to this location. I think first and foremost what I would say is it would be incredibly challenging for the committee to special permit every lot they're considering selecting. So even if you think it's going to work or not work, ultimately it still has to go through that special permit process. And for the committee to say, well, is the traffic good there? Is it not good there? It's just so challenging, which is why I go back to the idea of picking larger zone, more parcels. As it relates to this, we've had a traffic engineer look at it. This may be the best location that I've seen in Massachusetts, and I've done this in a lot of cities or towns. One, this was a drive-through restaurant, bagels and beans at some point. The traffic counts for a cannabis facility are significantly lower than a drive-through restaurant, which by right could go here. So when the ZBA evaluates it, even though traffic's a concern, they may evaluate that, well, traffic's a concern, this is less traffic. All a conversation for the ZBA, which is a little bit to my point. The other thing, I just gave you a quick diagram here showing that through the special permit process, on the second page, we could come to an agreement that we will only allow right turns into and out of this facility. I should say, I apologize. These red dots represent all the lighted intersections around the building. That's what the red dots are. And on the second page is the traffic flow. It's just an example in working with the traffic engineers where you could actually, at this particular parcel, facilitate right turns only in and out, which anybody that's done some time on planning knows that is incredibly significant. Again, my point in this is it's going to be incredibly challenging for the committee to evaluate all of this. to pick individual parcels that they think don't work or do work without the benefit of this information. We spent an incredible amount of money doing all this research and time. It took us 2 months to evaluate 1000 Washington Street. With engineers, we've already done a site plan for it. We know what the challenges are and why we didn't pick it. So with that, Mr. President and Madam Chair, I will stop there, see if there's any questions. I think hopefully I've given you enough data to look at, and I'm happy to continue to work with the committee going forward.
Thank you. Any questions? I see Councilor Holmes.
Thank you. So the process of Natick from this overlay to that one place that was decided, do you know the length of time that was? I'm just wondering. The time.
Well, the town meeting process is so much longer, so I'm just trying to pick it up from there. From the time the overlay went in effect till they selected one, God, I'd be guessing 6 months, 8 months, something like that.
Thank you.
Other questions? Councilor Conti.
Mr. D'Agostino, would you agree that a zoning change can result in a use change of a property?
Of course, yeah, through a special permit, yeah.
So if the council were to zone, say, from 900 to 1,000 Washington Street as a zone for marijuana, is it possible that something that is there could become a marijuana retail facility?
Absolutely.
And that even if it's not for sale now, because of a zoning change, it might become for sale?
Of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just would
Yes,
like to
Councilor
know,
Reynolds.
the Route 9 is a nightmare, so I'm just going to ask you, how long was the route? Was it a 1 mile stretch, 3 mile stretch?
This is, if anybody's familiar with the area, this is Wellesley line to Oak Street, which is 1,000 feet or something, I don't know. And then from Oak Street, just down to almost to the Audi dealership. So that total thing, it's under a mile. I'm not sure the exact distance. Yeah.
And then, and one has gone in there, under a mile, that mile strip.
Well, all of those parcels are approved. Only one has moved forward.
Gone.
And that's the output of all the work, right? When you go through the special permit process and you meet with the neighbors and you do all the work, even though the town said this whole area is open because they're comfortable with it, things just get eliminated. You know, and you know, a little bit to Councilor Conti's point, yes, things can change in the future, but there's not a lot of value in selecting 2 parcels that we know today aren't commercially available and reduce the residential buffer. You might as well just wait until you have another one.
May I
Councilor Reynolds.
reply to that? May I just reply to
Yes.
that? So just to make it clear for anybody that may be watching, the 2 parcels they're not set in stone.
Yes.
We had to turn in certain amounts of parcels. For South Attleboro, 2 parcels, I felt, having lived there 35 years and knowing the area and the traffic pattern, and we talked about this a little bit, is that that's enough for that 3.5 mile strip of land. There are plenty of opportunities for other councilors to look, whether it's 123, 152, whatever they might think, to look at their area and say, hey, we could have one here, or we could do 2 here, or 3 here, whatever. So I'm just making it clear that it wasn't set in stone, that it had to be those 2. Those were the 2 that at the time I called, and I appreciate that now I know that the site northernmost has a lease agreement with Friendly, so it has to stay friendly.
It does.
The old Friendly. That was unbeknownst when I called them. No one mentioned that, just that, yes, it was up for sale.
Yeah.
And I don't know what's going in at this time, so in the other one that you're discussing. So that's an area that needs to be looked at. But definitely, if those 2 places aren't available, 2 others will be picked somehow. Based on, again, my feeling is as the city councilor, having been there a long time, I'm well aware of what my constituents in that area are comfortable with. They put up with a lot already, and traffic patterns is something that's important to me. And one of the reasons I like the idea of this overlay, that you have some opportunity as a councilor to say
Councilor Reynolds,
that.
can we
I'm
keep
just,
clarifying questions?
I know we're questioning, but I'm replying to his thought process, which I think people need to know about that are watching. So that's all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor. To that point, I agree with you. I think that the market dynamics, the special permit process and traffic, having been through it in Attleboro for cannabis on a very large-scale facility, and Gary pulls no punches, I assure you that the net outcome, you will need to select more parcels to end at 2. And I agree with you, it's probably 2. It might be 1 between Rhode Island and North Attleboro, but you can't start with 2 and hope to end with any. So I think you're going to have to consider additional parcels at the council level to allow the planning board, the planning department, the ZBA, all of that funnels, and I think the output, I agree with you, would be 2, because you still have Native Son to the north, and you still have Rhode Island, which just legalized. So market dynamics for that stretch is 2, but you're going to need to pick 20 parcels to get there. That's what we've, maybe not 20, but you understand my point. You understand my point. You have to pick more than 2. So, any other questions for me, Mr. President?
For the council or the planning board? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Is there anyone else to speak in favor?
Jack Jacoby, attorney with offices at 144 Bank Street. I hadn't planned on speaking tonight, so I'm not wearing a suit. Forgive me. But I am speaking in favor of both. And I do want to make a disclosure. We represent the Vachon family at 1000 Washington Street. I have knowledge of the agreement, but I can't say anything further. So please don't ask. But in terms, and I heard Councilor Conti's comments at the meeting where you almost voted, and I did want to point out that in the original proposal that was planned highway business and general business, there was some question, why can't we just limit it to planned highway business? I would like to add a factor that you may not have been aware of, which is that most of the planned highway business in South Attleboro is controlled by Carpianato. And they very rarely, in fact, I've never seen them lease to anybody who wasn't a national or a regional retailer. And so the likelihood, in my opinion, that they would lease to a marijuana company is very low. So that leaves us with general business. I understand what the counselor was saying, that there might be a place, you may have used Bristol Glass, I don't remember, but that may have been what you used as an example. That would be a particularly poor place for such a business. I do have faith and confidence that the zoning board will make the right decision when presented with the evidence, but that leaves us with the overlay as perhaps a way of dealing with this. And it just strikes me, I don't know if the city solicitor has given an opinion yet, but I would be worried about an overlay that only had 2 properties in it as to whether there could be a legal challenge. So as my predecessor at the podium said, if you only name 2, you might get none. It strikes me that for legal challenges and to get some businesses out of the industrial park and onto the places you want them, that it might be a very good idea to add 3 or 4 or 5 more locations that you find are appropriate for this type of a business. In general, we were afraid of these kind of businesses. We decided to have the municipal council be the special permit granting authority. That turned out not to be a great idea, and we put it back to the zoning board. We also put it in the industrial park because we thought that we really didn't want it on places like Route 1. But the more I think about it, the more I think that is the right place for it. That is the major highway which is set up for business. And if we don't have enough general business along there, then maybe there are some other lots that are appropriate in other parts of the city, and I would just urge you to be cognizant of that and to avoid the bugaboo that always comes up, which is spot zoning. And so we want to be careful in whatever we do.
Thank you.
I just want to quickly reply to this. Yes, we did check it out with the city attorney, and she said yes, we could do as many or as few as we wanted to.
Well,
so that was one of the things we checked out. And 2, this is humor, Jack, I would love to have an overlay for all the gas stations that are on Route 1 in South Attleboro, and we don't. So, hello, that's why I'm sticking with what I think is important for South Attleboro.
Understood. And I have not researched the issue because I was unaware of what this proposal was until I came here tonight. But I do have concerns if there's only two for a variety of reasons. And I don't want to contradict what the city solicitor has had to say, but it just sort of goes against the grain to think that an overlay district has only two very specific parcels in it. But if the city solicitor says, then you rely on the city solicitor's opinion.
In fairness, one last quick thing, is that others can be added on all parts of the city. There is nothing, I'm going to repeat this 100 times, that no one else has added yet, but there are plenty of other places in the city they can be added, and you could have up to 20 sites. That's the deal. But I would prefer many less, but okay, that's all I have
But
to
I
say.
would urge you to do exactly what you just said, is to find some other additional sites.
Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. I was going to ask what your thoughts were on this, on how Natick approached this with the overlay, and if you could speak to any other sites that you felt would be appropriate in the city.
Again,
Areas.
I didn't intend to speak, and I have not seen what you have on Natick, but it strikes me that if you chose carefully, which they seem to have done, that would be a very good policy decision for this council to make. And there may be locations on Pleasant Street, I don't know. There probably aren't any on North Main Street that I can think of. Maybe there's some on County Street, or maybe on Park Street. But we want to, I just want to be clear that I think putting them in planned highway business is going to be difficult. And so I urge you to follow this procedure, but I also urge you to carefully choose some others so that there is enough variety available so that we can accomplish what I think is this council's intention, which is to make a further change in the way that we regulate marijuana businesses.
All set. Councilor Conti?
I'm good.
Is there anyone else with questions? Anyone from the planning board?
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you, Attorney Jacoby. Is there anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone? You can't come back, yeah,
Even
sorry.
if it's something different?
Nope,
Okay.
sorry.
You can email it.
Anyone else to speak in favor? Anyone to speak in opposition? And again, just your name and your address for the record.
Good evening, everybody. Joe Drazak, 121 Westminster Avenue. I'm speaking this evening a little, I think Mr. D'Agostino said a lot of the reasons I was here initially as to what I would be opposed for. Watching along this process for the last 4 years, it's taken a lot of twists and turns. And last week, with king-making or picking these individual properties, was concerning to me. An overlay is something that involves a multi-use area where there's residential, commercial, industrial, but one thing is allowed over all of it. And these two pieces that were brought up would not fit. And, you know, I don't think a lot of research was done before a lot of talking was done over where you guys are going with this. And I think that the advertisement in the newspaper was very vague, and I understand that, you know, it's the second time up or the third time up, but if you're going to talk about zone changing, I think it needs to be addressed specifically. I think it needs to be brought up to the people it's going to affect, and just putting this blanket thing like, oh yeah, we're messing with the ordinance. I don't see a line of people here speaking in favor. So I have a few facts that I had prepared, and I'm going to continue to read those, because they did not change, even though the two locations, thankfully, are spoken for, unable to be used. Attleboro has 3 operating businesses at this point. As Mr. Rajan has said, previously we had discussions about what the definition of the number 5 is. There are not 5, and the application process will continue until we are at 5. We're not at that limit. North Attleboro was another example. People want to try to be like North Attleboro. I'll be brief. They have approvals, because I called them, and I spoke to the Director of Planning, had a nice conversation with him, did some research on their website. They had the limit of up to 6 permits. However, they only have one operating facility because his quote was they were taking a wait-and-see approach because there were 2 other pending and not approved yet. They have a 42-page application process, a 300-foot buffer, and are not taking any applications at this point. So it's not really working out great for them. So if you want to follow a bad model, you want to be like North Attleboro, then there's your blueprint. The section of Route 1 that Native Son is on is a divided highway. It's a state-controlled divided highway. You don't have crossing traffic. Picture Atlantic Golf. Picture the BJ's gas station where there's no division in the road, okay? So if you're going to put it on something like that, those factors should be considered. Speaking about planned highway business and something that Councilor Reynolds is pushing, and it's not even her ward, like from Chick-fil-A up is...
If you could just address the full council as opposed to...
Okay, I was
Thank you.
just, yeah, but I'm saying she mentioned that she wanted counselors to bring it from their own wards. So, I mean, I don't know how you would do that, but, I mean, I think that you should I think you should bring parcels that are even in your own ward. So that is Ward 2, like everything from Uno's north, I think, actually it's the Shell station if I'm correct. The Shell station on the southbound side of Route 1, north to the line, is all planned highway business. And from May Street north on the southbound side of Route 1 is planned highway business, but it's Ward 2. So I don't know if you can really speak for other people's zones. There are already existing planned highway business zones in the city. Attleboro has 13 zones. I don't know how many more zones we need. I think maybe we just have to focus on filling the space that we have. So if Attleboro is running at 300% capacity, 3 times the number of operating businesses than North Attleboro. Why don't we get to 5 first and then see what happens instead of putting something in a paper and making people come down here? Actually have a plan. This is anti-planning. This is the planning board. The zoning board of appeals should be here too, in my opinion, because they're the ones that are actually issuing the permits. They have years of experience of sitting here listening to proposals. They're not just going, oh, I like this one, or I like this one, or this other place might like this one. So the sturdy, whatever that is, closed, first response, urgent care location on the triangle behind D'Angelo's, looks like a lot of traffic there, but in the credit of the potential applicant, it's not near residential. So I'll be even more brief. I have 3 options that I think that the council would possibly be able to move forward with, and I'd appreciate if you could consider them. One is to actually go back to, with the convoluted wording that you guys are in with the amendments and all of that, Councilor Conti's charter objection to eliminate the GB altogether and just go forward with planned highway business, right? That's one step. Planned highway business is not near the residents. It would be a win-win because the marijuana retailers would have expanded options. They could go into new areas. There are places on Route 1 which are not owned by the developer. There are private. Babe's Restaurant, look at the old bridal shop, Goodwill, the pool store. I could name Cerrone. If somebody wants it, let the market be the market. That's been said by this body before. So I don't think that it's the council's responsibility nor its job to go and pick locations where it wants. An overlay is for a general area. My second suggestion might be, if general business is to be considered at all, and I've brought this up since second one, that 250 feet should be the setback for residential offset. 250 feet. You want to add more of this opportunity for these businesses, then the residents need more of a buffer. It wasn't initially set up that way because of the industrial and IBP zones where it could have more room. There weren't houses supposed to be there. You're increasing this, though, now by a lot more space available if you change it to anything but planned highway business. So if you're going to include general business, I think that there needs to be more of a setback. If you trust your system so much, the third nuclear option would be to allow it everywhere. If you trust your zoning board and your 100-foot buffer to protect the residences that you are elected by, not the people who live out of state, not the businesses that are going to take all the money. Put it in your neighborhood. Let it be 100 feet from anything. Overtax the building department, overtax the planning board of appeals, the zoning board of appeals, excuse me. If it's good for one spot, why can't that traffic nightmare be in everybody's backyard? Make it fair, equitable. Ordinances, which we are talking about, this is coming from the ordinance committee, is supposed to change rules. You want to add things, change the rules. You want to change zones, that should be in the newspaper. And I'd be happy to expand my comments if necessary, but I mean, I don't think it's very fair to the residents. I'm not against the business. I'm not against it being in the places where you said it was going to be to begin with. You haven't reached that limit yet. I think you got to slow down a little bit, especially before you put something else on Route 1. I've lived there a long time, too.
Thank you. I have Councilor Holmes first.
Thank you. So, thank you for coming out. You're very passionate about this, we can tell. So, you 250 feet from principal residential use, that's what you're suggesting?
Or yes, residential zone or another residential use, yes.
And
See,
then-
this is where we got burned, because we were only 100 feet from, they put the center line of the street, measured 100 feet, that's where they're going to put the building, because the general business, the industrial zone that I live next to, I'm in the residential zone, but 100 feet in an industrial zone gives you a lot more space. So that's where we got into the problem, and that's why I've been against the 100 feet.
Okay, so 200 feet. So what about changing because there's 500 feet for other areas. Would you want that to be 200 feet, 250 feet for all?
No, leave the existing ordinance alone. So if it's a schoolyard, if it's a playground, if it's, and actually, I talked to Father Gallant from St. Teresa's Church, because the preschool daycare facility is there, and it's a 500-foot, and I have it, I did the math. It was going to be one of the things I handed in, but, I mean, you really want to stay away from spot zoning, and I have an article here about pot zoning, because this is a situation that happens in a lot of other cities and towns, from what I've been reading, is people want to pick and choose where they want stuff without going through the proper process. So this is the original 1000 Washington Street zone. This red line was done by GIS. It tells you what you guys can have this. You can do it at any point. Just put 500 feet in, and it maps out the lot and the parcel, and this is all going off of Councilor Reynolds' discussion from last week, so.
Perfect.
That's how close 500 feet is. So all of the existing standards and everything that you have, all the conditions that need to be met, can all stay in existence, but if you're going to change and check off that GB, it should have an additional requirement.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councilor Conti?
Thank you for the work that you've done. Would you please make a copy of your pot zoning and spot zoning research with our administrative assistant? You can email it to her.
Okay.
But I would like that circulated to councils. I'd like to read it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Drazak? Hearing none.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in opposition? Anyone to speak neither for, sorry. Just your name and address for the
Good
record.
evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Duff White. I live at 12 Carnegie Way in Attleboro. Standing at the back and listening and reading the tea leaves based upon my experience as a counselor for a term, I see the writing on the wall here. I would like to caution everybody here about the unintended circumstances of what you are looking at doing. This is a solution in search of a problem. Okay? What you have in place right now is working, and it's allowing the people of Attleboro to figure things out. As one of the earlier speakers said, you got pot available to you in Rhode Island, you've got it available at Native Sun, you've got it available in the business park. This is not a difficult situation. This is not a hardship for people to go and obtain this product legally. What is the hardship is when you work across from one of these businesses, and the owner of my company has requested that I do not publicly state it because he doesn't want to devalue his business should he choose to sell the property. When you work on a dead-end street that used to have 15 to 20 vehicles a day outside of the employees who worked on that street, and now on some days you have 500, okay? When you have people urinating in the woods, when you have people smoking product as they drive away, I realize the businesses are not responsible for how the customers use the product. No more so than a liquor store would be responsible for somebody driving away. But this council took a long time looking at whether or not to prohibit nips, because that's a consequence of the business. I advise you to please look at this situation very thoroughly. New York City, well, New York put in place that you can smoke marijuana any place that you can smoke cigarettes. Sounds wonderful if you're a marijuana smoker. Walk through Times Square. You get a contact high in about 15 seconds. Police are standing here, police are standing there. People are smoking joints right in front of them. Drugs are being sold openly on the streets where they used to sell watches, you know, fake high-end watches and purses. I believe I sent to a member of this council last month and to the chief of police, there was a bus that was turned into a mobile pot sales operation in New York and parked 2 blocks away from a school location. You have to make sure that when you write this ordinance and if you make this change, and I'm against the change because what is in place right now is working, and it allows us to look at things as a community and say, okay, we can change it here, we can change it there. Right now, what we have is working, and if you are not absolutely perfect in what you do going forward, you can create more of a problem. I drive about 45,000 miles each year. There's 351 cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. My work territory has taken me as far as Delaware, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, up into Maine, where I'm closer to the North Pole than I am the equator. Okay? I see the consequences of this. All right? Anybody who thinks that adding traffic to Route 1 is a good concept is sadly mistaken. I realize that I am paddling against the current here. I get that. I'm not saying to prohibit the sale of the drug. I am saying look very, very closely at what you are proposing to do and make certain that it is the right thing in all aspects. If it is not written properly, the problems that you will create will be yours. Right? I drive down the road many days, more days than not on the work days, and I can smell the pot coming from the vehicles in front of me. If I'm going down the road because we're on a public forum, if I'm going down the interstate at 65 miles an hour with my windows rolled up and I can smell pot, what's going on when those people are getting to work? What's going on when they come across your grandchildren's school bus or your children's school bus? You can't control that here tonight. I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to look very, very closely at what you are proposing to do and make sure that if you do move forward against the will of a good portion of the constituency that you are charged with representing, that you put in place the best possible rules that you can.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. White. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition? Is there anyone to speak neither for nor against? Hearing none. Councilor DeSimone, would you like to close this public hearing or keep it open?
Yeah, I think so. Just for the record, Vice President Kovas, do we incorporate the former comments that were given, at the previous hearing on the marijuana zoning amendments in the fall? I think it's fair to.
I think that's fair.
Okay,
yeah,
so we can
absolutely.
incorporate, for folks who weren't here, who spoke previously, we can incorporate their comments.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. President?
Councilor Blair.
Ms. DeSimone, I believe those people had an opportunity to come back tonight. I don't think, in my opinion, that you should take records that were taken previous and incorporate in this. If you want to, don't close the hearing. Give them an opportunity to come back and speak. But as far as incorporating it, this is a new procedure starting tonight.
Duly noted. Councilor Dolan?
Yeah, I don't know. I think I disagree with that because we kept the two same subjects in the same hearing, so why wouldn't we just, it's almost like we extended it because we left off after 90 days.
Thank you, Councilor Dolan. So, Councilor DeSimone, would you like to close it?
Yes.
Okay. This public hearing is closed. Madam Clerk, would you?
Ask them if they're-
I'm sorry. Planning Board, are you okay with closing this public hearing?
We are.
Excuse me.
That's all right.
And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, can you read the next public hearing?
Mind handing it to him? Thanks, pal.
Public hearing regarding the following loan order to replace a water department front-end loader. Ordered that $355,000 be appropriated for the cost of purchasing and equipping a front-end loader. That to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $355,000 under Section 7-1 of Chapter 44 of the General Laws, or any other enabling authority, and that the mayor is authorized to take any other action necessary to carry out this project.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor?
Hi, Courtney Allen, Superintendent, Attleboro Water Department. The front-end loader that we currently use for our water main breaks and snow removal is actually a 1985. It's been with the department since 1984, so it's nearing 40 years old. I have folks that are nearing retirement in my department, and this loader was there when they got there. It was inherited originally from the wastewater department sometime in the late 90s to early 2000s. Since then, the maintenance department over at Water has done a really, really great job maintaining it, but 40 years is 40 years. We've done engine replacements, transmission replacements. Right now, when the crews use it, when they shut it off, the gas pedal sticks down. They have to reach down by hand and pull it back up, or the loader will not start the next time they go to use it. And basically, to fix that, I mean, we're looking at a high-ticket item, pulling the cab off, in hopes that when maintenance gets in there or when we send it out and a contractor gets in there to look at it, that we can still get parts. So basically, it's paid its dues at this point.
Perfect. I have Councilor Blair, the Councilor Conti, and the Councilor Dolan.
You plan on financing this, correctly?
We do.
What? Courtney, I'm just trying to be extra polite tonight. It's hard, but I'm going to try. How much on a water rate? If, in my recollection, every $20,000 that we spend is a penny on a water rate. Am I correct?
Ballpark, yeah. It goes up and down by year, but you're close.
It's close, right? You're talking a lot of money on a water rate. That's not going to be $350. How long are you asking to bond this for?
The bond on this, I believe, is 10 years off the top of my head. The original intent, when I spoke with the auditor and the budget admin, was to transfer from retained earnings to be able to purchase this. The reason we didn't is that it would swallow with the contingency, because everything's coming in more expensive once it shows up. We've all seen that. It would knock over 35% off of what I have in retained earnings for this year, to start with, not counting other items that we still have to buy out of there.
Have you looked at the possibility of lease purchasing it
I have not.
over 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? It certainly would reduce the actual cost to your department over a period of time. It wouldn't add that penny for every $20,000 you spend that year
Well,
on
it
water rate.
could, because then you're looking at, instead of a loan or pulling it out of retained, it's going right into,
I think that.
oops, sorry.
I think that, I think that the auditor is going to speak to like the financial piece. Maybe Courtney could speak more to the, like why the department needs it piece.
I do have a question.
Noted, thank you. Council Blair.
That was a question that I asked. No disrespect, Diana, believe me. But, you know, we got to consider the ratepayers too. And it is a significant, if you do it the way, I'm a poor businessman.
Right.
But I did pretty good over the last 55 years when I ran that business. I didn't make $1 million, but I did all right. Doing it that way is going to be significantly more expensive for you, for your department, than looking at an alternative.
Right. And again, it was
And that's my concern, because the alternative is better than adding that penny per
Council Blair, do you have a clarifying
20,000.
question?
I thought it was. I got it over. I think I got my point
Thank you.
across.
Councilor Conti.
I have two questions. Question one, is are you familiar with the safety protocols that come with a new front-end loader that have been added in the last 20 years? So the new machine would have that the old machine does not have.
I'm actually not, I don't have a hoisting license. Much of my crew does. Everybody in the department, if this is what you're getting at, they all go through competent person training, job site training, trench safety, and that sort of thing, anytime they work in or around a loader or a backhoe or any.
So my thinking is that, question two, is it possible that the insurance that you carry on your equipment and workers would go down if you replaced an antique front-end loader with a new loader that has all the computer-aided safety protocols?
It could possibly. I mean, you're talking cammering and things like that on it, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Dolan?
I'd like to hear from Deb, if Deb is going to speak to this, because, I mean, if it affects the ratepayer, depending on, you know, what Deb says for our options, it's a 40-year-old piece of equipment. So I assume, when you make a decision like this to get a new piece of machinery that's this expensive, I assume you talk to the financial people in the city, correct? Like Deb Gould or the budget director or somebody?
Both.
Both. And so, and Laura Gignac, I would assume?
As soon as it becomes a loan order request,
Right.
yes.
So I assume they guide you, because this isn't necessarily your forte, right, in loans and such. So I assume they guide you and tell you what the best option for the city would be in replacing this piece of equipment.
That's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Allen? Hearing none, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good
Thanks,
night.
Courtney.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Right.
I'm actually not here for that subject, but since I'm in the audience and I was referred to, I figured I might as well weigh in. The original request that the superintendent of the water department put forth for the finance folks to kind of consider was from retained earnings. The concern was exactly what Courtney said. It would be such a substantial portion of her reserves. We got together and we thought that it might be a better option to look at finance options. To Councilor Blair's point, the city treasurer typically looks at things like, is a lease finance option a better, like a lease to own finance option, going out to the bond market, like what is it that we're looking at? The team met financial folks today with Acting Mayor Delicio, the outside financial advisor, the city treasurer, myself, and the director of budget and administration. We had done the preliminary work with Courtney and Tom outside of that, and the director of budget and admin does both city projects and school projects to weigh in on the financing of those and where we are. The plan still was, we believe, the best option, given the current rate environment, was to proceed with the loan authorization that, for the front-end loader that's down before the council. And what is yet to be determined and would be something in the future, near future, depending on when we take possession of the vehicle and that kind of stuff, is would we finance it short-term, or would it be something that would go long-term as a bond? That is to be determined based on delivery dates, market environment, interest environment. If it's something short-term, what would happen is you'd make the interest payments, and we would do pay downs similar to other pieces of similar equipment that we've done in the past, so that you're not paying as large principal and interest payments over time. The limitations on how long you can borrow for, whether it's pay down and only borrowing short-term or long-term, have to do with what the piece of equipment is and the economic life of the equipment, and it's all driven by statute, and it's under the auspices of the city treasurer. I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Thank you. Any questions for Deb Gould? Councilor Bennett, Councilor Blair.
Thank you. What is the economic life of this piece of equipment?
I would have to look at the statute. It's
I know we've
probably-
had ours for 40 years. I'm assuming it's well past.
Probably on the books, usually front-end loaders, I want to say, and I'd have to look at Mass General Law 40, Section 7 or 8 to see if it's inside or outside the debt limit and what the life is. Probably, we would never do it more than 10, if you could even do that. Ambulances, I think, are 7, vehicles are 3, and a piece of equipment that large could be 10 to 15, but I can't imagine that the financial advisor or the city treasurer would say, let's do that type of equipment for that length of time.
Thank you. Councilor Blair?
Just a quickie. Courtney would probably be able to answer this much better than you.
The life of the vehicle?
Now, how many hours a month does that piece of equipment actually get used?
You can just send it in, because what you've talked about, yeah, but if you just want to email that to us.
Sure.
Thank
As
you.
long as I get it before the vote comes, Mr.
course.
President.
Of course.
I think it's particularly important.
Any other?
And to that point, I can find out economic life on that piece of equipment and share that with you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? Hearing none? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak neither for nor against? All right, and this is in the Public Works Committee, so Councilor Dolan, would you like to close this public hearing?
I would, thank you.
Thank you. I declare this public hearing closed. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Acting President. Public hearing regarding amendments to Ordinance 16-11, water rates, and 16-18, sewer use rates. The amendments include corrections on item number 20 on November 15th, 2022, in the mayor's communication.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak in favor? Is there anyone here to speak in opposition? Is there anyone here to speak neither for nor against? Hearing none, this is in the Ordinances Committee. Councilor DeSimone, would you like to close this public hearing?
I would, thank you.
Thank you. I declare this public hearing closed. And finally, Madam Clerk.
Thank you. Final public hearing for this evening regarding a new Class 2 license application from Tyson Auto, Inc., 885 Washington Street, with 10 customer parking spaces and 55 display spaces and 48 storage spaces.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to speak in favor? Come on up. And just for the record, please say your name and address.
Christian Dialis.
Thank you. And go ahead.
Your address.
Well, I have to say good evening to you, and that's a beautiful, personnel. I've been watching everything that's going on. You have a very big responsibility asking people for and against. I wouldn't like to be where you are. Well, I've been in the car business for like 38 years. Been in United States for like 25, will be on the 19th of January. That was Martin Luther King, the day I came. All my life, that's what I've been, doing. I learned, the good and the bad of it. And I realized that if you are doing this business, you have to do at all time the right thing, because there is no good reputation, to people selling cars. So the reason that I'm here, coming from New York, Hempstead, New York, is because, my kids are gone, they with their family, and I'm 56 years old. I've been working for people. The waking up at 9, 10 o'clock does not suit me anymore. I would like to have my own. And I accidentally, come to see my brother, and he was working with Mr. Wally Watek that have more than one dealership. He used to buy cars from him. And then I tell him, what do you think? You think that would be crazy if I, come here and try to have a business? He thought I was playing. And months after that, we went to Wally. Wally said, yeah, I think I can give you one of my, dealers. I said, which one? He didn't want his secretary to hear, and he whispered to my ears, that one, the one at 85 Washington. So we've been paying since, I believe, June, over like $6,000 for some good 7-8 months without the opportunity to make a dollar, because we don't have the license. And we agreed upon staying under him, where he will give us 20% on each car that we sell. It's like we're paying him to make nothing. So finally, I'm being truth, even if the accent might, if you don't get it, let me know, because I'm trying to be as truthful as I can. So it's been like 2 months. I wake up on Sunday, we have camera, and I see him with his, son in the premises. I feel like it's not proper, because if I'm paying all this money, he's enjoying everything we should be enjoying, all the cars are him. And I called my brother. I said, what do you think we should do? Because it's not easy to tell him getting off of him, because he said to us, we have to wait to do the license. We were misguided all along, up until it's less than, what, 1 month and a half? We did that, and I believe somebody came and said, we're looking for Tyson Auto. When my brother saw him, he broke, in tears, because it was not possible. And we have to make the payment because we signed a lease with the guy for 2 years, okay, to comply with everything. And our money is going down slowly, and thank God, we make the move, we come here. After my speech, you can see that we're looking for clemency, for mercy, understanding, that we will be doing the right thing. The place been there for a long time. I don't think there's a lot of question around that. How many cars we have to put. It's like I'm following what you tell me to do, because I'm not home. When you come to somebody's house, you do what they tell you to do. Sit, you sit, stand, you stand. That's what I'm willing to do. Not more, not less.
Thank you. Councilor Dolan?
So 885 Washington Street, you're leasing that building from Wally, which was auto-mazed?
Yes, and we currently having 883 as well, which is
across the street,
Rex Auto. And that's what stopped us from going out of business, because Rex is paying for itself and helping with, next door.
Wait, is that auto-mazed 1 and 2?
No, there is auto-mazed and there's Rex Garage.
What garage?
Rex, R-E-X, like King, Rex.
So you're taking over the lease from Wally, so it's not going to be auto-mazed anymore. It's going to be
Tyson Auto.
You have 48 storage spaces on that property?
Yes. I think it's 50 something with 10 space for customer. I have it here too, but when I add it up, when you put 10 to 40, it should be 50.
Your plan was approved though, right? Your plan went through the inspection department?
Yes.
Well, that seems like a lot over there.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
lots.
Well, I wish you luck.
Thank you very much, madam.
Are there any other questions? Councilor Waterman. and
Yes,
then Councilor Holmes.
Yes, I came over and we visited together about a month ago, I think. And we counted all the spaces, including the storage spaces, which will be, I believe, in back of the building, correct? And it appeared to fit to me.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, that's it.
Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. Well, I just hope that, I certainly hope for success here, and also just reach out to us now that you know the process, to Council Waterman or to the clerk if you're needing help with licensing or anything in the future.
Just tell me how high and I'll jump. You're the boss.
Reach out to us so we can help
Councilor
you,
Conti?
so we can help them.
So I didn't catch your name, and I apologize.
Christian Dialis.
Christian, so you're from New York, and you're buying the company, but you're going back to New York. So this man is going to run the business for you?
No, he does not have the experience. This is what it is. I didn't explain that. He been here for 8 years. So now he just attracted me to that. Now, I don't know if the experience is going to be beneficial for me and him because he's my brother. We are 50-50. So the minute I have my license, I must think, because if you have somebody, guarding your ships, you don't want them to tell you, and it's 1 or 2. Even if it's my brother, you want to be here, right? I'll be here. I'll be living here. I'm moving.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Christian? Very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else to speak in favor?
What they said is good for me. My little brother is more clever than me. More everything, I give him the overhead.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here to speak in favor? Is there anyone to speak in opposition? Is there anyone to speak neither for nor against? Hearing none. Councilor Waterman, would you like to close this public hearing?
Yes.
I declare this public hearing closed. And that's it for our public hearings. I entertain a motion to go into committee of the whole.
Second.
Motion's in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are in committee of the whole.
Thank you. Please come back off from me.
Thank you. Have a good night. All right, so we are in committee of the whole. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council on any matter of city business? Please go forward.
Hi, good evening. Dennis Travers, Hodges Street, across from St. John's Elementary School. I've lived there for 8 years. It's 2 issues which are kind of connected. When one is on County Street and turns up Riverbank Road by the hot dog stand, it only continues along that curve, and then one comes to a bridge. Suddenly, the signage stops and it becomes Hodges Street, either there or at the following stop sign. There's no indication that it becomes Hodges Street, and that was one issue. So if one turns left there onto Mechanic Street to travel along the Attleboro Community Garden area, once one passes that area, one can take a right on a slow incline up to Willett School that ends at Watson, I believe. I have walked a small dog there for the last 8 years. First of all, I believe there should be a sign there that says Riverbank Road, either extension or whatever would apply, because not everyone is from Attleboro and knows the intricacies of the traffic patterns. Also, there is no dividing line on that entire stretch of Riverbank Road traveling past the Willett School drop-off section up to Watson. And I would suggest and request that a double dividing line is painted onto that entire stretch of Riverbank Road. often in the summers, and tonight there was a Willett School event. There were people parked on both sides of that road, and cars were going up the middle of the road. Now, that might be necessary because they don't want to hit a car. But in the mornings and in the afternoons, when I'm walking the dog up that street, I see adults and teens flying down the very middle of the road with no concern for which lane they want to be in or should be in. And I think if there was a bold yellow dividing line going up that street, considering there are children at the school that get onto buses and get off from parents picking them up around 3 o'clock, is a dangerous situation. So I am just making, now I've lived there for 8 years. I'm amazed nothing was ever done. So I request a sign there at Riverbank Road and Mechanic Street, and then a yellow dividing line up the street to Watson. It's a huge safety improvement, for one thing. And my first time to come here, I'm amazed at some people's inconsideration the way they drive. I've even oftentimes pointed, hey, move over that way. And I've either gotten a rude gesture or no response, and some people even speed up. So I just wanted to make that known to people, but I do think it's a valued safety issue. I'm a former elementary school teacher, and I know how those things go. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And if you could hold on for 1 second for questions. And the one thing I will encourage is that, Councilor Dolan, do you mind giving, was it Travers?
Travers, yes. Robert Travers was a former council member for a few years. That was my first cousin, just to drop
Provide
names.
a business card so that he can contact you.
Very
and
nice,
same
very
thing,
nice.
Councilor Bennett.
Yes.
And so Councilor Dolan is the chairperson of Public Works, and she can help with the signs. And
Okay.
you can talk to her about that. And Councilor Bennett is the chairperson of the Traffic and Safety Committee.
Okay.
And she can potentially provide suggestions and recommendations to the Traffic Study Committee to alleviate some of that speeding or to add some traffic calming.
So you're suggesting I come by the office one day and discuss
I'm
it, or?
suggesting,
It's a pretty obvious.
Councilor Bennett and Councilor Dolan provide you a business card, and then you can give them a call at some point.
Okay, excellent.
For specific items. Does anyone have questions for Travis?
I was
Councilor
just going
Bennett.
to mention that we actually do have some business cards here in the office. So if you want to stop by Virginia's office here, actually I think, there we go, wonderful. I think she's on it.
Oh, great.
We'll get those for you, no problem.
Okay.
And also, I didn't catch your first name?
Dennis.
Dennis, thank you so much, Dennis, I appreciate it. I'm familiar with the area, I'm familiar with some of the issues, particularly around the school. So definitely we'll look into that.
Thank you very much. It would make me very happy. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions for Mr. Travers? Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to bring anything before the Committee of the Whole? Hearing none, I move to arise from Committee of the Whole.
Second.
Motion's in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are arisen from Committee of the Whole. Next, we'll go on to the reading of the Mayor's communications. Clerk?
Thank you. January 17, 2023. Dear municipal councilors, I hereby request your honorable body to schedule a public hearing pursuant to Section 16-2.2 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro as amended to lay out a portion of Dale Court, length of 280.21 feet from Station 2 plus 41.37 to Station 5 plus 21.58 as a public way, and accept said way and any related drainage, water or sewer facilities or easements, all as shown on a plan and profiled entitled Street Acceptance, Glandale Court Extension, Attleboro, Mass., dated June 6, 2021, revised through August 23, 2021, prepared by Lucas E. Klim, RLS, and Todd Pilling, RPE, which plan and profile have been deemed satisfactory to the Superintendent of Public Works. Enclosed, please find the necessary documents, copies in your packets.
Thank you. We'll assign that to Zoning and Land Use Committee, and this requires a public hearing. Councilor Holmes, would you like to call for that public hearing on February 21st?
Please.
Motion's in order. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
I respectfully submit a communication from Superintendent of Water, Courtney Allen, regarding requests for funds for engineering and design services relative to the temporary treatment design for PFAS at the Wading River plant. Design and permitting for the temporary treatment facility, as well as pilot studying for PFAS and TTHM, precursor removal, have been underway over the last year. The method of temporary treatment, which needs to be designed, has changed due to additional water quality data obtained during the pilot study. Several requests made from the town of Mansfield during the site plan application process for the temporary facility have also resulted in additional design work. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body appropriate $49,000 from account 6100-359000 Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings to fund 3339 PFAS. Copies in your packets.
Thank you. Public Works?
I respectfully submit a communication from Chief of Police Kyle P. Hegney regarding the receipt of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, EOPS, Bulletproof Vest Partnership Program. This program enables the purchase of body armor for police officers, whereas 50% of the cost is reimbursed by the U.S. Department of Justice, and the other 50% is reimbursed by Massachusetts EOPS. The Massachusetts EOPS aspect of the program is controlled by a 5-year contract. This contract covers purchases made between March 1st, 2022 and February 28th, 2027. The Bulletproof Vest Partnership follows a reimbursement protocol, and there is no match required by the City of Attleboro. In accordance with Chapter 1, Section 12 of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, I hereby request your honorable body to approve expending such funds and any future grant amendments. Copies in your packets.
Thank you. Public Safety?
As you are aware, on May 26, 2022, your honorable body funded $18,000 for a purpose of repairing 2 mixers in the wastewater denitrification system from Wastewater Enterprise Fund retained earnings. The accounting department has received notice from Wastewater Superintendent Hayes that the project is complete and all liabilities have been satisfied. There remains $4,554 in Fund 3231 NOx mixer. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body that the balance of $4,554 in Fund 3231 anoxic mixer be closed to the Wastewater Enterprise Fund 6,000. Copies in your packets.
Finance Committee?
As you are aware, on March 2nd, 2021, your honorable body funded $118,700 for the purpose of a SCADA security upgrade from the city's water supply from Water Enterprise Fund retained earnings. The accounting department has received notice that the project is complete and that all liabilities have been satisfied. There remains $10,780 in Fund 3313 Water SCADA project. Therefore, I hereby request your honorable body that the balance of $10,780 in Fund 3313 Water SCADA project to be closed to the Water Enterprise Fund 6100. Copies in your packets.
Finance Committee?
I respectfully request your honorable body transfer $515.04 from account 1124-1000-578300 Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account 1124-1000-578020 Citywide bills from previous years in order to pay fiscal 22 invoices to Constellation New Energy.
Finance Committee?
I respectfully submit a communication from Director of Budget and Administration regarding a request to enter into a multi-year cell tower lease. In 1997, the city competitively procured 5-year lease of space on cell towers on O'Neill Drive for a private vendor to install cellular network devices which improves cellular coverage within Attleboro. The lease had 4 additional 5-year renewal options for a total of 25 years. This lease, as amended, expires March 4th, 2023. As such, the city went through a procurement process for a new 5-year lease with 4 additional 5-year renewal options and has selected a vendor based upon responses. It is the same vendor that currently occupies the tower. The lease document has been reviewed and approved as to form by the city solicitor, Peter Mello. Therefore, I request municipal council approve a lease agreement executed by and between the city of Attleboro and Crown Castle, a Delaware statutory trust and subsidiary of T-Mobile, for rental of a site located on O'Donnell Drive, site ID BS03XC528B2, for the purpose of wireless communication devices as described herein. Additionally, in order to be able to enter into this lease before March 4th, 2023, and with consideration that an acting mayor has a 10-day waiting period to sign a vote of the municipal council, I hereby request your honorable body to consider this by February 7th, 2023. Copies in your packets.
IT and Infrastructure Committee?
For your information, I regret to inform your honorable body that we have received the resignation of Personnel Director Owen Bebo, effective February 3rd, 2023. Please join me in thanking Mr. Bebo for his service to the city. Sincerely, James J. Delicio, Acting Mayor.
That last one, FYI, copies to all councilors. All right. And then we can go on to the clerk's communications.
Clerk's communication dated Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. We've received a letter from the Election Commission stating that they have received a recommendation from Deputy Chief Timothy Cook of the Attleboro Police Department for the number of officers needed to staff polling location. It is requested that the City Council approve this recommendation for all elections to be held in the 2023 calendar year.
Ordinances and Elections Committee?
We have received a letter from Frank Cook, 32 Division Street, in opposition to the proposed changes to the marijuana ordinance. Also attached are the comments he made during the last public hearing directed to the Municipal Council and the Planning Board.
Ordinances Committee?
That concludes communications for this evening.
Outstanding. Next, we'll move on to committee reports, and since we have a guest here, we'll start with the Finance Committee. Councilor Conti?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to call, for the Finance Committee, I have several motions before you this evening. From the docket of January 17th, 2023, I move to approve a one-time increase in the cost of living adjustment to 5% for the Attleboro Contributory Retirement System for the period beginning July 1, 2022, as provided in Chapter 269 of the Acts of 2022. This increase from the 3% cost of living adjustment granted in July 2022 to 5% is for 1 year only.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Conti?
I didn't hear who seconded that. Oh, thank you, Councilor Reynolds. Yes, this was discussed in detail during the committee, but at the committee meeting, there was a question whether or not the cost of living adjustment was going to have an effect on the bond rating. So, at your request, Mr. Acting President, because I can't do this, you can and I can't, you actually have invited our finance officer to address the council.
The honor, so. Deb? And thank you for being patient and waiting. And just, I knew there were a number of questions last week. I had fielded a couple questions, and so just in order to make sure that everyone was comfortable voting on this tonight, I had invited Deb to join us tonight. And so, yeah, if anyone has questions, feel free. And
You voted it out of
yes.
Sorry, I just brought my papers, so I'm out of order, but thank you for having me. I've talked to several of you regarding this matter over the course of the last week, some of you more than once. So I just wanted for clarification, to make sure everybody understands, if not all of you, certainly those folks at home that are watching, that the appropriation requirement to the retirement board is based on an actuarial valuation. So the actuarial valuation that was performed with the date of 1/1/22 was just recently accepted by the retirement board. That valuation is the valuation that would have in it the required appropriation for fiscal '24. It just so happens, on an actuarial basis, that the appropriation for fiscal '24 is the same in the 1/1/22 valuation as it was in the 1/1/20 valuation. What does that mean? It means that the funding requirement for the fiscal '24 budget is not affected by the new valuation. After the retirement system received the preliminary information regarding the 1/1/22 valuation, which is the funding schedule that will be in place through 2038. The notice was received in November, I believe, about the change in statute about the 5% COLA. So we engaged Stone Consulting, which is the same actuarial firm, to tell us how much would it cost the system, how much would it cost the member units, right? The City of Attleboro is the biggest member unit. There are 3 member units of the contributory retirement system here in Attleboro: the Housing Authority, the Attleboro Redevelopment Authority, and the City of Attleboro. We engaged Stone Consulting to give us information on the cost of the 5% COLA. Fundamentally, the cost of the 5% COLA would change the actuarial funding schedule beginning in 2037. So the funding schedule from 1/1/20 valuation shifts in fiscal year 37 when you look at the 1/1/22 funding schedule. Now, I have those funding schedules with me and copies for all of you. They were sent as attachments to the communication requesting the 5% COLA be considered to the mayor. But if any of you need that, I have those with me. And there, for the public's perspective, that's also posted on the City of Attleboro website under the retirement board. The valuations, that's where you can find those. When the 5% COLA was discussed from the retirement system, the question was, would the first entity that has to accept it, if we want to do it, is the retirement board, and then we'd have to send it to the mayor. From the mayor, it has to go to the council, because it is a funding requirement in 2037. The retirement board, when we asked Stone Consulting to look at that, we had Stone Consulting look at the 5% COLA. We had Stone Consulting look at what would happen if we didn't do the 5% COLA, but we increased the COLA base from $13,000 to $14,000, and what happened if we increased the COLA base from $13,000 to $14,000 and did the 5%. The only thing before the council for its consideration that the retirement board acted on was the request for the 5%. We did not move or act on the increasing the COLA base. So for those folks that are watching, the COLA base is, by statute and other things, the first $13,000 of pension, not retirement allowance, because your retirement allowance is made up of 2 components, right? Or it's made up of annuity and pension. So the only portion of a retirement allowance that is eligible for a COLA is the pension, and it's only the first $13,000 here in Attleboro. So one of the first questions posed to me by a list of questions that Councilor DeSimone asked me was, is there any impact to the fiscal '23 budget, the current budget that we're in? The answer is no.
Good.
It's relevant, I think, that we also know that there's technically no impact to the fiscal '24 budget for the cost of living adjustment, going from the 3% that was already granted on effective July 1st, 2022. This COLA would be like an additional 2%. When the retirement board took up the matter and was looking at the COLA base increasing from 13 to 14, that was actually more money. And then, obviously, if you did the increase of the 5% and you increased the COLA base and you added those 2 things together, it's even more money, right? That extended the funding schedule longer than we presently have. So right now, the approved funding schedule by the retirement system is the approved schedule that would be available for the 1/1 valuation, and the impact of the COLA is, I find the right piece of paper, because there were many studies done. And I'm not an actuary, so it is more complicated than accounting. So the proposed COLA increase, and I believe you received this. If you didn't and you only received the one page of the schedule, this document might help. And I have these with me. I thought they were an attachment to the memo that was sent on December 27th to the administration from the retirement system as well as to the council. But the proposed COLA increase of 5% is only on the 13,000 base. It's only for 1 year. It does not impact the funding schedule that is in place for fiscal '24 and going forward. It would, from '24, it will impact that funding schedule beginning in 2037. So if you were to look at the funding schedule that's in place, that was approved by the retirement system on 1/1/22, that funding schedule has an increasing percentage of like 5.86% from years 24 through 36. In year 37, the funding schedule drops. Okay, and without the 5% COLA, which is on your letter, without the 5% COLA, the required appropriation in 2037 would be $13,387,000, according to the funding schedule. So from years 24 through 36, the schedule for the retirement system on an actuarial basis, based on the information from 1/1/22, there's no change in the required contribution in fiscal years 24 through fiscal year 2036. In fiscal year 2037, based on the existing schedule that has been approved by the retirement board, which will drive the funding requirement really for fiscal years 25 and 26, because another valuation will be performed in 1/1/24, which will change the funding schedule for the balance of the years, right? Based on that schedule, in 2036, the required appropriation is $19,624,000. In 2037, the required appropriation drops to $13,387,567. Transpose those numbers. If the 5% COLA is approved, that drop goes from $19,624,000 in fiscal year 2036 to only a reduction down to $16,755,000. So even though on an actuarial basis, the cost, so to speak, of the 5% COLA, right, is an increase in liability of $1.3 million, it has an overall increase in the contribution in fiscal 37 by about $3 million. So that's the cost of doing that. The appropriation requirements to the retirement system are based on an actuarial funding schedule that shifts every 2 years. So trying to answer your questions, the 2023 requirement to the budget will not change. The 2024 requirement through 2036, based on the schedules today, will also not change. The impact will be borne on the budget to the city predominantly, because it's the largest member unit, right, would be in 2037, and that would be that the drop between the fiscal budget in 36 to the drop in the budget in fiscal 37 wouldn't be as great. I believe, my understanding, because Councilor Carney and I have talked as well, and I think you said increasing for an inflation factor. I think the actuarials build that in, and I only say that based on the increase in the liability being the 1.3, but the actual cost being the 3 million. So on an actuarial basis, that is somewhat considered.
But they're using a 7.25% discount rate?
We no longer are. So that's another thing that will play into the conversation about the bonds, that I think that, to talk about that. But just for purposes of where does the funding schedule come from and how come so much money is due the retirement system, it's based on an actuarial evaluation. I just wanted to make sure everybody knew that, because sometimes folks, when we talk about retirement, certainly not people on the council who are more informed than the general public, people kind of want to know, where does that come from? So that's where the funding comes from. The discount, the actuarial assumed rate of return, which is a component unit of the calculation for the actuarial, we dropped from 7.25% down to 7.0% in the most recent valuation. So if you looked at the valuation of 1/1/20, the discount rate, which is highlighted in the S&P rating review, which you probably looked at, that was 7.25%. We shifted that down to 7%, and I believe if you look at the current study that, again, just came out at the end of December, that had an impact of increasing the liability by about $6.25 million, right? Because when you reduce how much you expect to earn in interest, the cost of on an actuarial basis, how much money you have to fund is going to go up, right? So if we, similar to like the same type of phenomenon, if you said, hey, we think we're going to earn 8%, well, you'd have to put less money into the system, right? If you're going to generate more money in interest. So the actuarial rate of return is 7% on the new valuation dated 1/1/22, and that 1/1/22 valuation was the basis for how much would the 5% COLA cost. So we used the more recent information for that. One of the other things after, Councilor Connie, you and I talked, and I went and the city treasurer was kind enough to give me the S&P rating review information again. One of the things that was in the S&P rating review information was they highlight, which was part of your question about the bonds, right? And I will get to the rest of your questions, I promise. Was the information that you had asked was relative to the funding of the system. And a couple of things have come out of not only that conversation, but other conversations with counselors. I just want to be clear that, so everybody knows, to my knowledge, which is over 20 years now here, the city has always paid the retirement system the required appropriation. There has never been an instance where the required amount hasn't been paid. There have been 2 instances that I can recollect where there was either a delay in payment or, oh, let's do this. One was back in probably 2003. The council voted for what was called commonly the pension holiday. I think it coincided with 9C cuts. I frankly can't remember that level of detail, but we could find it if you were like, hey. But the point of the pension holiday was, I believe it was under the Robbins administration as the Dumas administration was coming in. And the pension holiday was to provide relief to the municipalities if they needed it and couldn't meet their funding obligations because the schedules were a different length of time back then, the actuarial funding schedule, right? So the city, not knowing and what was going to happen, right? The city took advantage and said, hey, let's at least take advantage of the pension holiday. And the council voted it in December of 2003. I was able to find one of those votes back then. We never actually did it. The things that would have needed to take place, or like the reserves came through, there was a supplemental budget, and those payments were made, the retirement system was made whole, and it wasn't a situation where the retirement system did not ultimately get the required payment. The second time that I can recollect that there was something was in March of 2022, the pandemic, right? We didn't know what was going to happen for fiscal 21. So in April of 2022, the retirement board, at the request of the city treasurer, said, okay, we won't take the full payment on July 1st. We can split it up. We'll take 50% on July 1st, 50% on November 1st. Why? Because of cash flow. We had no idea what was going to happen in the spring and summer of 2022. Nothing ended up happening, fortunately, in that regard, and we were able to make the payments without question. Double-checked today, and those payments, 50% was paid for 7/1, and the other payment was, I think, made on October 31st. I do not believe that there was interest due on that, but back in 2003, we were required, I think it was by statute, I'd have to go back and look, but we were required to basically true up the amount of money that the retirement system got by an interest payment, right? The interest payment would have been the actuarial assumed interest on the amount of money that the system went without for whatever prescribed period of time it went without it. 20 years ago, the funding schedule to the retirement system within the actuary was not everything due on July 1st. The city treasurer 20 years ago said, I want to build a funding schedule where I'm making you certain payments throughout the course of the fiscal year to preserve her cash flow position, and the actuaries done back then would have taken those payments into consideration when developing the funding schedule. So the funding schedule that was approved from the 1/1/22 valuation takes into consideration a payment to the retirement system on the date of July 1st. It takes into consideration a reduced interest rate now of 7%, a $13,000 COLA base, and a 3% COLA effective July 1st, whether it's given or not. The funding schedule that would basically become the new funding schedule going forward, if the 5% COLA were to be approved, would be the funding schedule that was provided as supplementary information, whereby the change would be in 2037. The reduction on the existing schedule would no longer be as great, it would be reduced, and that would be the cost overall for the 5% COLA.
Thank you.
I don't know if that helps.
Councilor Conti?
So, finance people use their own language, and I want to ask you a couple of questions to try to simplify what I think you just said. If the first $13,000 of a retiree's payments is based on pension, and the 5% versus 3% is only affected at that $13,000, then this change only means $260 to each recipient. Is that correct?
650 minus 390, yeah.
So it's a $250 payment to the 711 retirees.
So, there is not 711. There was 528 people paid as of
So
22.
711 enrolled?
I don't know where you're getting that number.
I'm
So
getting that number from this
So is
Stone
that,
Consulting report.
which report is that?
This is the Stone Consulting report?
Can you, so like, I have literally 3 reports here that say Stone Consulting. Is it GASB 68? Is it, like, on the front cover, does it say the
Dated
1/1
November 28,
actuarial?
2022,
I'm sorry?
dated January 1st, 2022. Actuarial valuation report
So,
out of our retirement system.
I went to retirement today and said, how many pensioners, basically, did we pay in '22?
Good.
And it was 528.
Okay.
And then there were, and that includes, so retirement allowance. So the retirement allowance, again, made up of pension and annuity. So we have 100, so I looked at 140 of them.
Back up.
Yep.
So the result of our vote is going to give $260 to 528 people. If we
No.
approve the 5%.
No, because not everybody has a $13,000 COLA base.
So it's less than 528 people.
It's, if somebody's getting a $7,000 annual pension, it would be 2% additional on the 7,000. So it's in theory still going to affect potentially 528 people. It's just there's only 140 people that don't even get a pension that's $13,000 a year.
Okay. So
those
it's correct to say, it's correct to say that if the council decides to vote a 5% COLA rather than a 3% for 1 year only, less than 528 people are going to receive a maximum of $260, and some of them are going to receive substantially less.
Some of them are going to receive less, yes.
So that's a correct statement.
Yes,
so my
I would say
second-
that's a fair statement.
Okay, so my second question is, the balloon payment in 2037.
Okay,
The balloon payment.
I don't look at it as a payment, it's a reduction of the payment. So the required, in 2037, right now, without doing anything, the city of Attleboro goes from having to make a payment, I shouldn't say the city, the retirement system's required actuarial contribution is $13,387,000, right? $13,387,567.
That's at 5%.
Nope, that's at 3%.
I'm sorry, that's
That's at the 3%. So,
the 3%.
right, so in my world, and I just need to make sure I'm on the same page as you, because in my world, a balloon payment means it goes up, right?
Yep.
And the payment will go up by, instead of being $13,387,000, it will go up to $16 million, but both of those are a reduction in the budget from fiscal 2036.
But it is going to result in a $3,368,021 increase to the payment in fiscal year 2037.
From the actuarial schedule today, yes.
So you say that the Stone Consulting took into accounting inflation, but I did not find that in this report. That I believe that they were using today's dollars throughout the report, because they're using constant dollars.
Okay.
So that $3,368,021 in $21 in 1937 is likely to experience a 52% increase in inflation based on the increase in the last 14 years. So if you go out 14 years, you wind up, if things continue the way they've continued in the past, that's not 3.68 million, it's 5.2 million.
All I know at this point, I can't speak to that. I can certainly follow up with them, but the liability increase, according to the effect of the 5% COLA on the study they gave us, the liability increase is $1.3 million, which ends up having an impact on the funding schedule of the 3%. Excuse me, the $3 million. Granting the 5% COLA increase does not require extending the schedule, right? We don't have to go out additional years, and nor increasing the contribution by more than the previously amount planned, except the contribution in fiscal year 37 increases by $3 million.
So my question is,
Yep.
will the retirement board in fiscal year 2037 face a $3,368,000 increase in payment that one fiscal
No.
year as a result of our vote
No,
on this COLA? No.
no. Because the retirement board's not going to face that increase, because when the 5% COLA is implemented, which is really a 2% delta over what's already been implemented, folks would get that, and it's a one-time thing, right? So they get that 5%, we'd give them the 2, they'd get that one time, and then next year, if there's a COLA, which is a different question that you asked, that consideration is on $13,000 going forward. So the folks who are below $13,000 right now in their pension, this gives those folks the greatest benefit, because now, if they're at $10,000, right, and they ultimately get the additional money, if you had a $10,000 pension and you had the 3%, you went, I can't even do math anymore in my head.
$300.
Yeah, you went the 3%, you had the 300. Now you're going to get 500, right? But next year, when the COLA is given on the first $13,000 of base, their base is now 10.5. But the majority of the people receiving a retirement allowance isn't going to be in that, because their base is already at $13,000 or greater. So they would get their next COLA only on the new $13,000.
So what
It doesn't
I'm
have
trying
the same
to-
compounding
What I'm
effect.
trying to get to is that this 2% difference, which affects a small population, has what financial impact in the fiscal year 2037?
On a per-person basis,
On a total budget basis.
the $3 million.
It's a $3
Yeah,
million.
but that's not to the retirement system, that's to the city of Attleboro.
Okay, fine.
That you said, is it going to affect the retirement system? And the answer was no.
So then, let me rephrase the question.
Yes, it's going to affect.
Is it such that in fiscal year 2037, that the budget director and the mayor in fiscal year 2037 are going to have to find an additional $3,368,000 in the budget to fund the retirement?
So if the actuarial tables that are here today are the actuarial tables in place in 2037, yes,
Thank
right?
you.
The difference is they won't be. Because a new actuarial schedule will happen at 1/1/24.
But based on the information we have now,
Yes, but
it's true that in fiscal year 37, an additional $3,368,000 will have to be found in the budget to fund this 2% increase.
the cut will be less. Because the budget in 2036 is $19 million, right? And the budget in 2037 is $16 million. So it is true that it's going to cost more than not doing it, but they're not going to have to find money. As one of my other colleagues said in a different forum, so the windfall to the city won't be as great.
Where's the windfall to the city?
So if you're comparing budgets to budgets, right, which you're saying the city's going to have to find $3 million more, right, if we're comparing budgets to budgets, and we only look at the actuarial study, based on the budget, so the required budget in 2036 for the retirement system, based on the current schedule, is $19,600,000.
Yep.
In 2037, it's $13,387,000. So the budget was cut. So the cut won't be as great. So the retirement system, if this schedule was in place in 2036, the retirement system's going to ask for $19.6 million. Most of that money would come from the city because it's the biggest member unit. Not 100% of it, but most of it. In 2037, the retirement system, based on the current funding schedule, is only going to ask for $13.3 million. That's a difference of $6.3 million, right? Just using the first numbers, not going all the way out. If the funding schedule, if the 5% COLA is approved by the council, the budget in 2036 is still going to be $19.6 million. But the following year, instead of asking for $19.6 million, the retirement system is only going to ask for $16.7. It is more money than if we didn't do the COLA, but it is less money than in the 2036 budget. So in the 2036 budget, the funding requirement is $19.6 million. In 2037, with nothing happening, right, nothing, the COLA not happening, it goes down to 13.3. In 2036, with the new schedule, if the COLA happens, the 5% COLA, the request in 2036 is 19.6 and then only drops down to 16.7.
Yep.
So it is very fair to say it's going to cost more money.
Yes.
That's where it shows. It shows there. But the system will be making the increased payments, if this goes through, over the next 12 years. It would, from 2024 through 2036, the first COLA, the 2% would happen this year. Before the end of fiscal '23, we would have to implement and actually do the additional 2%. Because based on my understanding and having talked to the city solicitor, that's the understanding that we have based on the PARAX information relative to the 2% COLA. It goes retroactive back to July 1st, 2022, but the board has to act basically on it in 2023. So one of the questions that Councilor DeSimone asked was, do we have to do it right now? Can we wait another month or two? Yeah, you could. You could, to take the matter up and to, if you had additional questions, if you chose to put it off for a little bit, at some point, the actual administration and implementation of doing it, of actually getting the COLA if it does pass, becomes sort of how do we work that from the retirement? We'd have to kind of work backwards from the pension payment date of June 30th and say, okay, pension payment date, we know we need 3 days to make sure certain bank transactions happen. We need the time for the pension. So we could come up with a date that says, look, if it doesn't happen by this particular date, the likelihood of us being able to get the stuff done timely and properly for that, that might be tough. But that was one of your questions. Does it have to happen now, or could it happen?
Thank you, Mr. President.
I have Councilor Holmes and Councilor Bennett and Councilor DeSimone.
Thank you. I only have a couple brief questions, but thank you for coming down. So have we ever done a one-year, my first question is, have we ever done a one-year adjustment before like this? Secondly, how do we know, when you said that the tables are always changing, you just kind of indicated that this actually may change. So I guess what's the reassurance, or what would that process look like? How often do the tables change?
They have to change. We are required to do an actuarial every 2 years. The retirement board is
So
required
every 2
to do
years
it.
they change. And then have we ever asked for a percentage increase for 1 year only?
I don't believe the law has ever provided for it in the past. I can't find that it's ever been allowed. I looked for it, I couldn't find one. I called a colleague that was on another system for even longer than I've been around, and she shared that she has no recollection of there ever being one. I think this was the state's answer to the inflation last year. The state, so one of the questions was how many systems have done this? To my knowledge, there has never been a 5% COLA. There is a COLA every year. It's 3%. It can be no more than 3%. This MTRS, the state's base is $13,000, and the state has done the 3% COLA from both MTRS and the state pension system, as I understand it. There's no state agency that I'm aware of that has tracked the number of pension, like systems that have done this for the 5% COLA. That was another question that Councilor DeSimone asked. So the retirement system reached out today to find out from Mass Retirees, which is an organization that kind of tracks and supports retirement legislation and stuff. So they're the most interested party that we could find the information from. They gave us a list, and on the list of 102 systems, there have been, out of 102 systems listed, 7 have a COLA base of $12,000, 17, including Attleboro, have a COLA base of $13,000. The balance of the 78 systems have higher COLA bases, and only of the 102 systems listed, 20 of them to date have acted on the 5% COLA. The retirement boards have approved it. An additional 10 systems have reported as final that it's been approved. I don't know how certain, I'm not certain how accurate the information is, because the Attleboro Contributory Retirement System acted on the COLA at its December meeting, but we're not on the list with the check mark saying we're one. So this is so new in November. The chapter happened in November. The act happened in November. The retirement systems may or may not have acted on it in December, and some of them may or may not approve it.
Thank you.
I don't know if that helps.
Yes, it does.
Councilor Bennett and then Councilor DeSimone.
Thank you. Just one question for those maybe who aren't as familiar with pensions and how these generally work. Can you explain a little bit about what's accounting for that drop between 36 and 37 in the funding requirement? Is that because we're funding more, or because we've changed something in the way that we're working the pension that's accounting for sort of less of a demand from the city?
Based on the current schedule and the mandate that we have to be funded by a particular date, we have an increasing 5.86% over the first 12 years, and then once you get to that, it drops off in the last two.
Okay.
So it's just on an actuarial basis that the outside firm, right? So we have to be funded by a particular year by statute. There's a requirement that the pension system be funded. So in 2028, I believe, the funding schedules were adjusted. The length of term was adjusted, because that was one of your questions. Have we ever done this before? To my knowledge, we have not done an increase like this that would affect an individual member. There have been instances in the past where the city has requested relief, that the board has provided relief to them, the pension holiday or on a cash flow basis. There have been other instances in the past where the board had a funding schedule that was prepared, and the incremental increases were such that the administration, once got the draft of it, came before the board and said, hey, can you change your funding schedule? Can we add a year, what can we do to provide relief to the city? Things have happened over the course of time where being cognizant and aware of our fiduciary responsibility to the system, the board's historical position has always been, if the city wants to ask for those concessions, for lack of a better term, we have historically worked with the city. It's a 5-member board. I mean, there's 5 people. They could conceivably say no. The actuarial numbers are driven by a number of components. So other things will affect the overall. If we had a year of unprecedented high rate of return, right, then the system generates a lot of interest, the funding requirement goes down. When you have terrible years in the market, right, you conceivably are going to owe more money. Other things that impact the funding schedules and the requirement to fund the retirement system certainly can be seen in the actuarial study, and all that other information is there. But generally speaking, some of the things that would affect it, obviously large market swings. There is smoothing built into the actuarial, right? 5-year smoothing. Early retirement incentive, we had one of those many years ago. That obviously impacted the funding schedule. A new funding schedule had to happen for that. Assumed rate of return, when it went from 7.25% down to 7%, the impact to the valuations between those two reporting periods, it increased the overall requirement of what needed to be funded. Mortality tables, how a mortality tables impacts. If people are expected to live longer, it's going to cost us more money, right? If people, all of a sudden, there's an expectation of earlier death, it's going to be, I hate to say it, but it's going to be cheaper for the funding, on the funding basis, right? Increases in salaries, right? So if you have large increases in salaries over time that compound and people are going to have those benefits at the end, those are going to increase the cost of an actuarial valuation, and changes in law as it relates to what the benefit's going to be. So if there was reform for the pension systems in April of 2012, so the length of service and when you vest, the timeline 10 years stayed, but the age factors changed and stuff like that. So you have to stay a little bit longer, you have to be a little bit older in order to be eligible for certain benefits. So those changes in law would also affect the schedules. So I have no guarantees, right? There are absolutely no guarantees when it comes to this. When I can't even, the actuarial assumed rate of return was significantly greater than 7% years ago, right? Like how much the system expected to be able to get in interest on the investments that we had was significantly greater. So I can't guarantee, and there's one thing that I can guarantee, that the schedule will change between now and 2037. That I know.
These are a best guess.
Right. And this
adjusted every 2 years.
Right. And what I found really interesting about this, and
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a snapshot. That's a best guess based on a snapshot in time, right? What I found really interesting, because, and I didn't realize it until the executive director and I were talking about the amortization schedules. This is the first time I can recollect that the amortization schedule from one valuation, the valuation of 2020, didn't shift for 2024, right? The 2022 valuation. Because we do it, so people might say, okay, so you're talking about valuation numbers from 1/1/22, but you just approved them in December of 22. Why is it taking so long? The retirement board made a conscious decision to change the way that we did the actuarials, because what used to happen was you had to do a 1/1 valuation. We had to hurry up and get it done, and then we kept messing up the budget director's numbers because we would hurry up and get it done, and we'd be like, okay, keep the spacer in there, but if you had a down year in the market, all of a sudden we're there saying we needed a couple extra $100,000, right? Or, hey, you know what, this is critical, and I should have mentioned this. You can't go down in the funding schedule, right? So if the valuation was $9,908,000, which is the requirement for 2024, that's their starting point. They can't start with a smaller number than that just because you made a lot of money. So that valuation, that number is a fixed number. So once they started with that, and we looked at it, I was surprised when I went back and I looked, I'm like, okay, now I understand why you're like, what's the big deal about 20, things moving? Because for 12 years, nothing happens on these schedules when you look at them. You're like, where's the difference? And the difference is in 2037.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Councilor DeSimone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Say something?
I just wanted to make sure I get the rest of your questions.
Well,
Anybody
yeah,
else?
I was going to follow up on that. So the reason I asked about why we could hold off, and although I have a better appreciation for why, was, the economy particularly now is very unpredictable. So if we wait 6 months, who knows, things might change. But also the impact of the recent increase in Social Security that we spoke about, the 8.7%. And also this. If we fire, look, the world we're in now, who knows what's going to happen as we come out of this pandemic. If we shoot the shot now and things get worse, it's like, are we done? Are they going to come back again? Like, do you think this is something that could happen again if things continue to trend downward? Like,
when you say
having to make this kind of increase because of a poorly performing market in investments. Could this happen?
This requested increase
Yes.
is not because of poorly performing markets. This is because we want to give people a greater benefit than they already had.
Oh, so it has nothing to do with the market performance?
This increase, the requested increase for the 5%, so the actuarial change is, so the difference in the two schedules, the 1/1/22 schedule and the new schedule, if the 5% COLA happens. The only difference between those two data points is a 2% additional cost of living adjustment on the base up to on the $13,000 base.
Okay.
This, because it's using the same information. The COLA study for the 5% used the 1/1/22 valuation.
Okay.
So everything else was the same 7%,
Right.
the same $13,000 COLA base, the same mortality tables, everything there. So this $3 million
Yeah.
in 2037 is due to a 1.3%, $1.3 million increase in liability today, so to speak. And
All
then
right.
compounding over time, that's what it costs on the tables. Your question about
The impact of Social Security and whether we
that's a
can wait.
that's separate. So that
8.7, yeah.
8.7%, right, COLA? The recent 8.7% COLA, that would drive the COLA that the system, the retirement system, will consider for effective July 1st, 2023, which would be part of the FY24 budget. These actuarial reports build in that the 3% COLA is going to happen. It's the 2% that's not built into the calculation, which is why the board had to ask for a study. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah.
Anything else, Councilor DeSimone?
No, thank you.
Excellent. Councilor Reynolds?
So, Deb, I just want to clarify, and I think this is what is happening. Wasn't this something that PERIC, or the state, I don't remember where it came from originally, is allowing? It's not that all of the retirement systems made they have an option to do it. This 1 year, they were given the option to move it to 5. They can't turn around next year or 2 years from now and say, we want to do it again. That has to come from somewhere else if they were ever going to increase from the 3%. This is a gift kind of that came along. Not really a gift.
This is a change in law.
Yeah.
This is, there was a...
For 1 year. This year.
And it is my understanding that if not acted upon in fiscal '23, the option to do it goes away.
That's right.
So it can't be, my understanding, and talking to the city solicitor today, I believe we'd have to act on it before June 30th. Which is why I said we'd have to kind of back up. If the council said, hey, you know what, we just want to kind of hold on for a little bit. To that point, the numbers on the actuarial basis aren't going to change. So if your concern is, I don't want to spend $3 million, I don't want the actuarial table to change. I know it's going to be in 2037, but there's not going to be a new table to say this is what it is. The next table will be done in with effective date for the actuarial evaluation of 1/1/24. There won't be a new schedule that is done. The replacement, the new schedule is here. It's this 5% COLA, $13,000 base. What is the impact? The impact is in 2037, that increase from this one. I had a thought that I wanted to make sure, I lost it. It might come back.
Councilor Bennett and then Councilor Dolan.
Thank you. One more quick question. So if the council approves this, when will those pensioners who are receiving $13,000 or less see that benefit, that extra $260 benefit? When would they start to see that?
So frankly, it depends on when the council approves it, right? So if the municipal council took this up, do you mind if I look at a calendar? Is that allowed?
Sure.
Okay. If the municipal council approved this, right? Let's say, I'm just throwing it out there. I know, let's say you took it up tonight, right? Because tonight's a full council. In theory, you could vote it, in theory, right? So if you took it up tonight and it was voted in the affirmative tonight, because of our current circumstance with an acting mayor, the vote can't be signed for 11 days. Puts us at the weekend of the 28th. So the retirement board would never be able to implement something in January. It would be my expectation that the retirement board would, if it was voted tonight, right, and it moved that quickly, the retirement board would likely take up and do the increase in the February pension payment, which is dispersed on February 28th. And then we would do, similar to when a retroactive payment happens in the city, then you would go back and calculate the retroactive. It wouldn't both happen at the same time. And then the future benefits, March, April, May, and June, would also have them. But we would likely do the increase in February, provided that the executive director can get that through the PTG system, the payroll system, right? So it would be most likely implemented in February for the increase to the overall base. The retroactive portion would happen after that date because we'd have to fund everything on the retirement side.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Councilor Dolan, and then.
So I had that, so you answered my question about it being retroactive. And as far as waiting, the schedule's a schedule, so there's no benefit in waiting, right? Because this is the schedule we're on, so if we wait 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, it's not going to change anything.
The schedules won't change.
Right.
But if the concern of the council is a clearer fiscal picture, you'll know more at a different point in time, right? So to the councilors, beside your point, it's a snapshot in time and we're acting on the information that we have today, you know? I can remember sitting here at a committee meeting of Councilor Conti and him saying, well, you know, it was a capital improvements, and I'm like, well, in the absence of Armageddon, things should be okay. 3 months later, we had a pandemic. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know, but these schedules aren't going to change. The retirement board, unless a colleague on that board makes a motion to ask for some other study, there's nothing else before us that we could act on. There's a 5%. We are allowed by statute to act on a 5% COLA. There's nothing else out there right
so
now.
if we act on it now and bills come due in 2037, it doesn't matter. I hate to say, I don't want to say pandemic, Armageddon, because everybody's more afraid of a pandemic, was to happen again, that really wouldn't affect anything until later, right?
It wouldn't affect anything until later. If, you know, market conditions could change and we could have, 3 years of, unprecedented returns to the good, right? That would drive the schedules down and the funding requirement in the future would go down. We could have, 3 years of unprecedented returns to the bad, and those would encapsulate the next funding requirement. And it's, again, going to adjust in 2024 and 2026. Right. There were other schedules requested for changes of other things, like an increase to the base as opposed to the 5% COLA. Those cost even more money. And anything that requires a funding amount like this would require local, to my knowledge, would require local option acceptance. So this requires local acceptance. The retirement board has to do it, and the legislative branch of government has to do it. So if something were to happen and they came back again in 2 years because they said, hey, you know what, we still have unprecedented inflation, there's nothing to say that there can't be another special act. But again, right, the system would have to evaluate whether or not we thought we could afford it. And then we'd have to come to you all and say, hey, please do it. I can tell you that the other item on the table, it was discussed at a public meeting, so I don't think there was sufficient appetite to, at the time, to request an increase in the COLA base, which would be an ongoing, more expensive compounding effect over time, because everybody in the future would be benefited by an increase in the base. This increase really, truly only helps the people that are retired today.
Perfect. Councilor Conti?
Thank you. So you said something that made me think that I got something wrong. The special act allows us to change the COLA from 3% to 5% in fiscal year '23. If we don't change it in fiscal year '23, we're prevented from changing in the future unless another special act comes along. Is that true?
Yes.
Yes, my understanding is this is truly a one-time thing, 1 year, only
That's
available
very
for
important.
fiscal '23.
That's
Yes.
very important to me.
Yeah.
Because it's almost enough for me to totally change my attitude towards this vote, because if inflation does do what it seems to be doing, and we don't do this now, we're prevented from ever doing it in the future, and we've never done it in the past.
And we are prevented from doing it in the future as the law is presently written.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So,
And I
yes, that's true.
can't plan on them doing this again. So that creates a whole different scenario. I mean, even though I think this is a very small amount. I mean, we're spending so much time on this, and we have voted thousands of times of this in 30 seconds, you know, so,
But it is $3 million, right? In
That's nothing.
2037.
That's
And I get that,
nothing
but-
with this council.
Well, but it's,
Jim
so
Jones, can you cut that clip?
I think it's still important. I hope people get a better understanding of kind of like the whole process and scenario.
So,
You guys kind of get it. People, I know people watch. I know, I go to the grocery store too, and they tell me, I saw you on TV. So I'm just saying, I mean, yes, it is a one-time thing, and,
well, it's worse than that. It's not only a one-time thing, as if we don't do it, we can never do it again under current legislation.
that is my understanding.
That's very serious.
It has to be done by this year.
Right, so to me, that's a deal clincher. I think now I've changed my vote from my committee meeting to a positive one, because if we don't do this now, we can never do it again under current law.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Deb while we have her? And I know this was a very long discussion, but this is incredibly complicated, and I appreciate you coming down today and talking with us. And based on that, and because this is fairly complicated, are folks comfortable moving forward with the vote tonight?
Yes.
All right. Is there any further discussion amongst the council? You're all set. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Is there
Thank
any
you, and thank you for
further
taking the time to
discussion?
explain your questions to me today.
So the motion's on the table?
Council Bennett?
Oh,
Yes, the
is there a
motion's on
motion?
the table.
Thank you. So I just wanted to reiterate, just for my understanding and for clarification here, we're talking about an increase for fiscal year '23 only, with the retroactive benefits at the beginning of fiscal year '23, ending at the end of fiscal year '23, with a one-time shot to do this, and a benefit to those at $13,000 or less, really, on that $13,000 base of the pension of approximately $260 or less. It's a relatively small amount, but for some of those families, for some of those pensioners, that could be a big difference. That could be the difference between putting a little extra oil in their oil tank, or paying that high electric bill, or accounting for some of the groceries that we've seen go up in price. For that reason, I will fully support this, And I'm happy, to the extent that I can, with my knowledge of pensions, to answer any questions that my fellow counselors may have, or help clarify anything. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote, and we'll start with Counselor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Counselor. Should I address you as acting president, or Mr. President, or Counselor Cobus?
Whatever's quicker.
Acting President.
a rush?
And we've been going now for 3 hours, and so I move to take a 5-minute recess.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We are recessed for 5 minutes. We'll be back at 9:30.
I think that's a good discussion, though, because this stuff just keeps...
Call this meeting of the Attleboro Municipal Council back to order at 9:30 p.m. And Councilor Conti, if you would continue with your committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. From the docket of January 17, 2023, I move to appropriate $50,000 from the undesignated fund balance free cash general government account to fund 3577 Attleboro branding study.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Conti?
Yes, we discussed this last week in the committee. Suffice it to say that we've already completed a $40,000 study on downtown Attleboro, and the results of it were inconclusive with the population survey that followed the study, resulting in this study for the branding to try to pull together the results of that study in a more comprehensive manner. And that concludes my comments.
Any other comments? Councilor Dees?
Very briefly, just to say that Catherine Farrick is awesome at what she does, and I'm very happy to have this, this item. I think it's great for the city.
Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll start with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to appropriate $150,000 from the undesignated fund balance free cash general government account to the Planning and Land Use Comprehensive Plan account to hire a professional planning land use consulting firm to assist the Planning Board and the Department of Planning and Development to update the city's comprehensive plan.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Conti?
Yes, I was on the last comprehensive plan committee, and I thought at that time that we should, and this is years ago, that we should have had an outside consultant facilitating so that the city planner could play a better role in the development of the comprehensive plan. Now we're at that point where we've grown to sufficiently request the consultant, and I encourage my councilors to support this. It's a good professional move for a better plan going forward. That concludes my comments.
I'll keep it short, and this comment pertains to the next, the following two items. Our planning office does phenomenal work. These are awesome investments for the present and future of the city, so I'm happy to vote all of these out.
Any other comments? Hearing none, a roll call vote's required, and we'll start with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to appropriate $45,000 from the undesignated fund balance free cash general government account to the Planning Land Use Housing Needs Assessment account to hire a professional planning use consulting firm to assist the Department of Planning and Development to prepare a housing needs assessment and implementation strategy plan.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Conti? Yes, I think that anyone paying attention to the real estate market would understand the need for this. The council has a motion in front of the ordinance committee for auxiliary housing, or better known as in-law apartments. We've recently experienced a new direction in the marijuana overlay account for zoning changes, and the governor has proclaimed there's a certain area, I think it's a half a mile, within the transit department is ordinarily granting whatever housing development can be given. So there's a lot of changes in housing going on in the city of Attleboro that has added about 450 apartments just in the downtown area alone in the last 5 years, and it's insufficient for what's needs. This is very obvious to a lot of people, and bringing in the experts to give us a definition of what's a clear path forward is very worthwhile, and that concludes my comments.
Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and it starts with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to appropriate $41,000 from the undesignated fund balance free cash general government to the planning and land use space and recreation consulting account to hire a professional planning land use consulting firm to assist the planning board in the Department of Planning and the Development of Recreation Department and Department of Parks and Forestry to update the open space and recreation plan.
Second.
Motion's in order.
Thank you.
Councilor Conti.
This is also a plan that I worked on in the last update, and it is much larger than you would think. This is a very important document that has a very impact on the city overall. And so I would encourage my councilors to support this, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. It starts with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to appropriate $149,000 from the undesignated fund balance free cash general government to fund 3518 City Hall facility to hire a professional engineering design consulting firm to assist the Department of Planning and Development, working collaboratively with the Department of Public Works, Police Department, and the Office of Budget Administration for renovations and improvements to the Government Center municipal parking lot, including an increase in parking capacity off-street and on-street, traffic circulation, handicap accessibility, stormwater infrastructure, and drought-resistant landscaping design.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Conti.
Yes. Mr. Acting President, when all of these motions came down from the corner office, I feared that the addition of $500,000 into the planning department for consultants would trigger a reaction of, would it be better to hire another person? Would it be cheaper to hire another person? And what are the people in the planning department going to do if we hire all these consultants? So I met with the city planner, and we had a conversation, and I learned about the reorganization of his department and the additional responsibilities that are being taken on by the department, and how the delegation of these, including this, which is a scope of work beyond the capabilities of the planning department. So of all the measures that we've passed for the planning department tonight, this one is the most important one because we don't have the skill set to do it, other than Councilor Holmes' measure in her committee. So as a result, I highly encourage my councilors to support this measure, and that concludes my comments.
Any other Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. I was concerned because we're really making a commitment to City Hall and this building, and I didn't know what the long-term plan was for that, because now we're investing significant money to figure out the traffic circulation and parking. With that being said, I will support it, but I am concerned about that. That concludes my comments.
Councilor DeSimone?
I appreciate Councilor Holmes' concerns, but I'm going to support it. I don't know. This building may be tight, but I don't think we're going anywhere anytime soon, so I think this is a worthwhile investment, not just for us, but also if it helps the police department anyway, particularly if we can get that GATRA structure removed. I think it'll be worth the $150,000 to figure out how to make the use of that space for all of us.
Councilor Conti?
So, part of my responsibility as the finance chairman and the capital improvements and city development is to monitor what goes on in the building commission meetings. So I monitor everyone. And in their discussions on the public safety complex, the consultant, Castell Booz, has come to the conclusion that that is going to be an approximately 150,000 square foot facility. The construction of the high school came out at $526 a square foot. The construction cost for this new public safety commission, as a result of inflation and the cost of building supplies going up, cannot be less than $600 a square foot. $600 a square foot times $150,000 is a $300 million facility. So that's going to require an override vote with the Attleboro public, who is still paying for a $265 million Attleboro High School. So in my mind only, the prospect of a public safety complex any day soon is remote, meaning that and I've placed a call to the police chief and said, if you don't push for a new roof and sealing those bricks and fixing those doors now, you're really going to be sorry, because you're going to be in the building, I predict, for a very long period of time. And I said the same thing to the fire chief. So I think this is a very wise move to try to maximize the amount of parking here, because I don't think anybody's going anywhere, and for good reasons, Counselor. The economics makes sense that we do the most of what we have available to us, and if it costs us $149,000 of the design engineering, I believe we're going to realize the benefit over years of time. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Conti. Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. Starts with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Covas?
Yes.
Covas? Yeah. 10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President. My apologies for being verbose. That concludes the business the Finance Committee has to bring before the council this evening. We are laboriously working on the capital improvement plan, and we look forward to a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you, Councilor Conti. Next up, we have Councilor Waterman with the License Committee.
Thank you, Acting President Cobus. The License Committee, from the docket of January 17th, 2023, I would move to approve the request for an automatic amusement device license renewal for JR's Bar and Grill on Pine Street with one pool table.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Waterman?
I've already spoken to this. Everything's in order.
Excellent. Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
You said roll call vote, but it was.
I'm sorry, voice vote. Excuse me, voice vote.
Okay.
Councilor Waterman?
And from the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I would move to approve the request for an automatic amusement device license renewal from Demoulas Supermarket, Inc., DBA Market Basket at 1200 Newport Ave for 2 rides, 1 carousel, and 1 mini truck.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Councilor Waterman?
And they're there for the kids to enjoy, and they're in good order.
Any other comments?
Nope.
Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
And that concludes the business of the License Committee. We'll meet at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Councilor Dolan?
Thank you. From the Public Works Committee, from the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to transfer $3,200 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Public Works Safety Sign Supplies.
Second.
Thank you. Motion's in order. Councilor Dolan?
We discussed in committee, these are for solar stop signs.
Perfect. Any other comments? Hearing none. This requires a roll call vote, starting with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to transfer $14,325 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for Capital to account Park Equipment to purchase a ride-on blower. If this particular equipment is not available in a reasonable time frame, June 15, 2023, we will seek to find similarly qualified replacements.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Dolan?
Nope, discussed in committee. I don't have any comments.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none. This requires a roll call vote. It starts with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to transfer $47,066.40 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for Capital to account Park Equipment to purchase a Sweep Star lawn sweeper. If this particular equipment is not available in a reasonable time frame, June 15, 2023, we will seek to find similarly qualified replacement.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Dolan?
Yep, discussed in committee.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to transfer $2,874.51 from account citywide reserve fund for transfer to account recreation lights and power to replenish funds used to replace Finberg Field fences damaged by falling trees.
Second.
Motion's in order.
No comments, we discussed in committee.
Anyone else? None, this requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Counselor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett? Yes. Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to approve the cities and local 1144 Public Works employees MOA for the years 2022 to 2023 winter season and request an appropriation for $25,500 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account snow ice removal snow participation. Furthermore, I entertain a motion to approve the MOA for fiscal years 2024 and 2026.
Second.
Motion's in order.
No
Counselor
comments.
Dolan? Anyone else? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Counselor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes? Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Counselor Dolan?
Thank you. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I move to call for a public hearing on February 7th, 2023 for the following amendment to Section 12 of the ordinances.
Second.
Motion's in order. This just requires, Counselor Dolan?
No comments, just, we actually did discuss this in committee with the call for a public hearing.
Perfect. Anyone else? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
From the docket of December 20th, 2022, I move to appropriate $500,000 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to fund 3564 Bishop Street sidewalk construction. This funding request includes a contingency for the price escalation.
Second.
Motion's in order. Counselor Dolan?
We did discuss in committee, we also discussed with Superintendent Tyler when we went on the tour. This is for Bishop Street only, it is not for Pike Ave. Just to be clear, if anybody's listening at this time.
Counselor
Yeah,
DeSimone?
just for the record, so I live over in this area. I just walked on Bishop Street this evening. I think sidewalks there are ideal just because the park's there, and there's a lot of people like me who walk, and a lot of kids, so I think this is a great idea, but my motives are slightly selfish, for the record.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, starting with Counselor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Counselor Dolan?
From the docket of December 20th, 2022, I move to appropriate $81,067 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account recreation F-350 truck to purchase a new diesel Ford F-350 utility pickup to assist with snow removal operations if this particular vehicle is not available in a reasonable time frame before June 15th, 2023. The Recreation Department will seek to find a similarly qualified replacement.
Second.
Motion's in order. Counselor Dolan?
No comments. We discussed this and went on tour as well.
Perfect. For clarification, Counselor Dolan, was this the one where the type of truck was changing? Okay. Perfect. Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll start with Counselor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes? Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
From the docket of December 20th, 2022, I move to appropriate $22,550 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account recreation equipment for funds to purchase a Land Pride 72-inch 15 series overseeder if this particular equipment is not available in a reasonable time frame before June 15, 2023. We will seek to find a similarly qualified replacement.
Second.
Motion's in order.
No comments.
Anyone else? Hearing none. This requires a roll call vote, and we'll start with Counselor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
From the docket of December 20, 2022, I move to appropriate $64,250 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account recreation equipment for funds to purchase a John Deere 320G skid steer loader. This particular equipment is not available in a reasonable time frame before June 15, 2023. We will seek to find a similarly qualified replacement.
Second.
Motion's in order.
I have no comments. We discussed in committee and also went on the tour for this as well.
Anyone else? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Counselor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
From the docket of December 20th, 2022, I move to appropriate $250,000 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to the following to replace one service truck and one medium-sized dump truck.
Second.
I just have an amendment, so I just want to finish it.
Oh, sorry.
So it's from, excuse me, so it's from free cash to account Public Works F550. I'd like to make a amendment. It's now an F600 series, not a 550. The 550 is no longer available. There is no price difference.
Can somebody second
Second.
the?
Thank you.
Second.
And then the next transfer is from free cash to account Public Works dump truck, and that's for $100,000. The Public Works, the F600 series was for $150,000. The dump truck was for $100,000.
In before there's a motion to amend it. So the original motion was approved. There's a motion to amend it from an F550 to an F600. Are there any comments on that motion to amend it before we just vote on that?
So are we voting as amended?
Just voting on the amendment, and then we'll vote on everything. All right. We'll do a roll call vote, starting with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
And that motion passes. And now we're at the
As amended.
motion as
Do you
amended,
want me to read it
correct?
again?
No.
Or, all right, so this is as amended.
Any comments on the motion as amended? So now we'll do a roll call vote again, starting with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
From the docket of December 20th, 2022, I move to transfer $18,337 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Public Works Small Equipment to purchase 2 new walk-behind line painting machines.
Second.
Motion is in order. Councilor Dolan?
No comments. We went on the tour and spoke in committee.
Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
From the docket of December 20th, 2022, I move to transfer $10,353 from account Citywide Reserve Fund for transfer to account Public Works Small Equipment to fund the purchase of 2 new tow-behind cement mixers.
Second.
Motion's in order.
No comments. This was part of the tour, and we discussed in committee.
That's good. Anyone else? This requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes? Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
I move, hold on. This is December 20th, too. From the docket of December 20th, 2022, I move to appropriate $1 million from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to fund 3575 roadway repairs for urgently needed roadway
Second.
repairs.
Motion's in order.
This one, I do have a quick comment. I know we had discussed this in committee, and I was talking about that we as a city should put money in our budget as a line level to fund roadway repairs, since we know that Chapter 90 funds don't cover anything. And I got an interesting tidbit the past couple days that I know one of the municipalities that does it is Mansfield, that they add money. They've been bonding for every year for extra money for roadway work. I found that interesting. I don't know if that's something we want to do at all at any point ever, but I wanted to clarify my statement. I didn't want to make it sound like, everybody just had free cash and they were throwing it out there, when indeed some municipalities bond for it. So I didn't want to make it look like, I was being dishonest in any way. That's all.
Thank you, Councilor Dolan. Councilor Conti?
I can't imagine why anyone would think of that in your comments, but my comments are that this is, number one, roadways have an expected life of 25 years. Therefore, it does make sense to bond a portion of it because they have a life that exceeds the period of the bond. And 6 years ago, Taunton bonded $7 million because so much of their roads were in just so terrible shape. I've said it before, I'll say it again. In 2016, the Massachusetts Department of Transportation conducted a study at a $30,000 expense for the city of Attleboro and said at that time the city needed $2.6 million in order to keep the roads as bad as they are. The Chapter $90 that we receive are about $1.3 million, so we're still $1.3 million short in 2016 dollars, which in today's dollars is $3.2 million. So this $100,000 and the $1.3 million from Chapter 90 funds are still $1 million short to keep the roads just as bad as they are. This $1 million motion, which is, not common that we have $1 million motions, is badly requested by the citizens of the city, who, the number one complaint that I get on the phone is, why can't you fix my roads? So I not only do I encourage, and I'm sure all my councils are right there with me, because I'm sure you get the same phone calls, but in the future, when we get to the budgeting, I would like to put forth the idea that maybe a stabilization fund for road repairs using a source of income that we can spearhead towards the stabilization fund to remove this issue permanently from the management of the city so that the roads will be cared for, and that concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilor Conti. Councilor DeSimone?
I'll keep it brief, just to echo, this is a significant amount of taxpayers' money, but people work all day. When they come home, they would like to travel a smooth road on their way home. So it's super important, and I appreciate both the council's ideas in terms of bonding and stabilization. We've got to do more and plan better, because roads aren't a surprise. They've been here for a while. They're going to be here for a while. So I appreciate your ideas, and I hope we can move on them in some way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
That's all the business for Public Works Committee, and we look forward to a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. Next up is Traffic and Transportation. Councilor Bennett?
Thank you. Reporting for Transportation and Traffic Committee from the docket of October 18th, 2022. I move to amend Chapter 10, Motor Vehicles and Parking of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro by adding 10-4.18 C.D. D, the requirements of Section 10-4.18 Charlie Alpha 2 shall not apply to any recommendation for placement of a permanent speed hump within 300 feet of a school entrance.
Second.
Motion's in order. The military was coming out a little bit there,
Sorry
but
about
go
that.
ahead, Councilor Bennett.
Thank you. Wanted to make sure that the letters for the subparagraphs were clear. So this was discussed in committee. Same with the following, the next several motions. I believe I have 3 or 4 more discussed at length, but this is a very narrow exception to what is our speed hump process for the city. And that is all.
Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll start with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Vice President, Acting President, it's the first time I messed up. Acting President Cobus.
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Counselor Bennett?
For the docket of September 6, 2022, I move to strike the following from the docket of September 6, 2022, referred to the Traffic Study Commission, a request to amend Section 10-4.12 of the revised ordinance by adding the intersection of Pine Street and Carpenter Street as a designated multi-way stop.
Second.
Motion's in order. Counselor Bennett?
No additional comments, thank you.
Perfect. Anyone else? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
I move to strike the following from the docket of August 16, 2022, referred to the Traffic Study Commission, a request from a constituent to install multi-way stops at Greenwich Street and Holly Street that is not included in City Ordinance Section 10-4.11, isolated stop signs, and 10-4.12, multi-way stop signs.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Bennett?
Same comment as before. This was discussed at length in committee. No additional comments. Thank you.
All right, so motion to strike requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
I move to strike the following from the docket of February 15th, 2022. Your honorable body voted on May 30th, 2017 to amend Section 10-5.2A of the revised ordinances of the City of Attleboro, prohibited on certain streets, to include Angeline Street, both sides. The mayor has been contacted by a business owner on Angeline Street asking for this ordinance to be changed. Therefore, the mayor hereby requests your honorable body to revisit this issue to see if a different solution can be made.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Bennett?
Thank you. Just a reminder that this is something that has repeatedly come up to the council. The same concerns exist as previously existed, and I don't think that any of the remedies that have been presented really solve those issues. And that concludes my comments.
Any other comments? Hearing none, again, this is a motion to strike. It requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Ms. Bennett?
Thank you. From the docket of, I move to strike the following from the docket of November 20th, 2018. Amend Section 10-4.6, left turn prohibited, May Street to Newport Ave. May Street traffic traveling, there's a typo here. The direction is not indicated.
It would be east.
Eastbound. Thank you. Prohibited from making a left turn onto Newport Avenue northbound unless otherwise directed by a public safety official.
Second.
Motion's in order.
Thank you. No additional comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? And this is a motion to strike again. It requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion passes.
Thank you. That concludes the business for transportation and traffic for this evening, and request a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. And Councilor Blair for Public Safety.
I have two motions to bring forward this evening from the docket of January 17th, 2023. I entertain a motion to appropriate $90,000 from account 1000-359000 undesignated fund balance free cash general government to the following: $30,000 to account 12201-000-524230 Fire Department Vehicle Maintenance, $60,000 to account 12201-000-524260 Fire Department Major Repairs.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Blair.
The fire chief was in earlier in my committee meeting, and I think he explained this sufficiently to the members here.
Are there any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll start with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes. Councilor Blair.
Thank you. From the docket of January 3rd, 2023, I entertain a motion to appropriate $108,137.80 from account 1-000-359000, undesignated fund balance, free cash, general government, to account 1-2201-000-587034, fire SUV, to purchase two 2023 hybrid Ford utility interceptor vehicles with required accessories. If these particular vehicles are not available in a reasonable time frame, June 15th, 2023, we will seek to find similarly qualified replacements.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Blair?
The fire chief also explained the needs for these and how they were going to be fit into his fleet and what was going to be let go. So I would hope there was no other questions.
Thank you. Any other comments? Right, this requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. I have no other business to bring forward this evening, but we request a committee next week at the appropriate time.
Next up, we have Councilor Holmes for IT and Infrastructure Committee.
Reporting for IT and infrastructure, there's no business this evening, but I'll call for a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. And reporting for zoning and land use.
Reporting for zoning and land use committee this evening, I have a few motions. From the docket of December 29, 2022, I move to appropriate $35,000 from account undesignated fund balance free cash general government to account planning and land use zoning consultant.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. Gary Rajan came to speak to Councilor Conti's meeting and also spoke to this matter last week. I think he answered a lot of our questions related to it.
Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll start with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
Thank you. From the docket of January 4th, 2022, I move to call a joint public hearing with the planning board for February 7th, 2023 to discuss amending the zoning ordinance 17 to allow for accessory dwelling units qualified on residential properties.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Holmes?
This is just to call for a public hearing. We did receive the planning board's recommendation, but it went past the 90 days from the last public hearing, so this does require us to start the process over again.
Any other comments? And this is just to call for a public hearing, so it requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you. I move to strike the following items as the administration withdrew the petition. From the docket of September 20th, 2022, I entertain a motion to approve the petition of the City of Attleboro to rezone a portion of Assessor's Plat 115, Lot 1, and Plat 127, Lot 1, AKA Highland Park, Highland Country Club, located along Rutherford Bullard Drive, Mechanic Street, and Road from single residence D to general business.
Second.
Motion's in order. And Councilor Conti, do you want to recuse yourself on this one? Or-
I do.
Sorry.
Thank you for reminding me.
It'll only be for a second. Councilor Holmes.
Thank you. So we had started the public hearing process and continued it, but the administration went in a different direction here, and I think even the council introduced new business to potentially have Highland Park be labeled in a different way, so we're kind of moving in a different direction with that, so that's why it's moved to strike.
Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. It's a motion to strike. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
I can move forward. So from the docket of July 23rd, 2020, I move to strike the following. A letter from Gary Rajan, Director of Planning and Development, and Nick Wiley, Environmental Planner, Conservation Agent, regarding NPDES2, Illicit Discharge Detection and Elimination Program, IDDE.
Second.
Motion's in order.
This is, thank you. We spoke about this in committee, but this business is very old and just needs to be discharged at this, to strike it at this point.
Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
I move to strike the following from the docket of December 12th, 2017, to amend section 17-16.1, non-conforming signs as follows.
Second.
Motion's in order.
Thank you. At one point, again, this is very old, from 2017, there was some challenges around non-conforming signs, but this business does not really cost anymore and should be we should strike it.
Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
That concludes the business for the zoning and land use, and I'll call for committee meeting for next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Reynolds.
Reporting for City Property and Claims Committee from the docket of January 17th, 2023. I entertain a motion to declare the following health department equipment as surplus and available for disposition. A T-Mark Super 6 PM paint crushing machine in fair condition.
Second.
Motion's in order. Councilor Reynolds.
No, I think it's pretty explained, fairly knowledgeable.
Sounds good. Any other comments? This requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
That's all the business City Property and Claims Committee has this evening, but I would like to call a committee meeting at the next appropriate time.
Councilor Angelo, thank you.
Thank you, President Cobus. Sorry. Personal Veteran, reporting for Personal Veterans Human Services Committee. For the docket of January 17th, 2023, I move to approve the appointment of Kevin Smith, 85 Steeplechase Circle, Unit 1, Attleboro, to fill an expired term on the Cable Advisory Commission, term to expire February 2024.
Second.
Motion's in order.
We talked about this in committee.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
For the docket of January 17th, 2023, I move to approve the requested changes to the rules and regulations for the city's exempt group regarding various articles, updates to reflect the current practice of exempt employees within the fire and police departments who normally receive items that are reflected in the respective department's collective bargaining agreement, including sick time and uniform clothing allowance.
Motion is in order.
We spoke of this in committee.
Any other comments? Requires a roll call vote. We'll start with Councilor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
On the docket of January 17th, 2023, I move to approve the requested change to grade .5 in the exempt salary table to reflect $15 per hour minimum wage increase as of January 1, 2023.
Second.
Motion's in order.
We discussed this. There was a question Councilor Holmes had. I think we took care of that. Only the first column changes. Nothing else changes on this. And that's about it.
Councilor Holmes?
Thank you. So I know, I was sorry, thank you for entertaining me because I did have a lot of questions, but it was just the one line. It impacts 3 employees that work at the Council on Aging. And I did learn something interesting. The cities do not have to follow the minimum wage requirement, which I found kind of wild, but obviously we would want to honor that. But so it's just 3 employees, and it's going from 14.
It's like 11 cents, I think.
Yeah, it's about that. So that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councilor Conti?
I'd just like to say that as a city council, I wish I was being paid minimum wage.
Second. Any other comments? Thank you. This requires a roll call vote, and we'll start with Counselor Waterman.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
On the docket of January 17th, 2023, I move to approve the City and Library Employee Association Local 4928 Memorandum of Agreement, OA, for fiscal years 2024 to 2026.
Second.
Is in order. Comments?
This is contractual, and we discussed this in committee.
Anyone else? Hearing none, this requires a roll call vote, and we'll start with Counselor DeSimone.
Ms. DeSimone?
Yes.
Mr. Angelo?
Yes.
Ms. Reynolds?
Yes.
Ms. Holmes?
Yes.
Mr. Blair?
Yes.
Ms. Bennett?
Yes.
Mr. Conti?
Yes.
Ms. Dolan?
Yes.
Mr. Waterman?
Yes.
Acting President Cobus?
Yes.
10 yeas, 0 nays.
Motion passes.
And that's all we have for Personnel Veterans Human Services Committee. Call for a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Thank you. And Counselor DeSimone.
Last up, ordinances, elections, and legislative matters has nothing to report this evening. We also look forward to a meeting at the next appropriate time.
Outstanding. And so there is no old business. We do have 2 items of new business. And for the first one, I'll recognize Counselor Blair.
Thank you. From Councilor Dolan and myself, I move to recommend the following for study and recommendation, that there be no parking from Orange Street to Brownell Street on Parker Street on the westerly side.
Second.
Motion's in order. Counselor
I
Blair.
just-
Oh, sorry, Counselor Blair.
This comes in to my attention from a concerned resident in that area. And with parking on both sides of that street, it'd be pretty hard to get a fire truck through. And that goes down to the entrance to the school.
You said Parker, right?
Yeah.
Oh, because it says park here. So it's
Mine says Parker.
Mine says Parker. But anyway.
See?
I see it.
I'm not insane. All right, thank you. Well, when I saw Park Street, I,
You said, did that what we
concerned.
talked about,
Yeah.
right?
Do we have to vote on that?
What?
Oh, you said you weren't insane.
Anyway, Counselor Blair.
Sorry.
Can I continue?
See what happens after
Counselor Blair.
10:30?
Huh?
Go ahead.
That, it did come in from a constituent that lives on that section of the street. And God forbid we get any snow this winter or whatnot, it's almost impossible to get a full-size fire truck down there if there's cars parked on both sides. And there is no houses on the westerly side facing Parker Street. So, in that section, so it's not like you're taking a parking space away from a resident. The houses on the other side have plenty of off-street parking if they so choose to use it.
Excellent. Any other comments? Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. I'll refer this to the Traffic and Transportation Committee. And for the next piece of new business, I'll recognize Counselor DeSimone.
Thank you. On behalf of Counselor Angelo and myself, we move to recommend the following for study and recommendation, that a special committee of the municipal council be established to explore the location and development of a new dog park in the city of Attleboro. I won't read the rest of it unless you want me to.
Motion's in order. Counselor DeSimone.
Yeah, so we know that at some point in the near future, the dog park is going to have to be relocated. As a dog owner and animal lover, I think this is something that requires a little bit more depth of thought. I don't just want to put a fence around a grassed-in area. I learned from the city clerk today that there's 4,500 dogs, licensed dogs in the city. That's about 1 in 10. So we have a lot of dogs, and I think there's a lot of people interested in what we do with this. And I'm hoping, and I think you agree, this could be actually a feature in the city. You know, not just something that you have to have, but something that's nice to have. So anyway, on that note. that's all.
Yeah, centrally located, and maybe there's some other activities along with, because some people might have kids there, they might, obviously want to do things for the dogs, entertain the dogs, keep it clean, keep it, have whatever else we need to have there for it, and getting ideas and all that stuff will be welcomed from a lot of people.
Thank you, Counselor Conti.
What a fight it was to get a dog park in the beginning. the fence, chain link fence that's around that dog park is used fencing. This was a terrible, protracted fight to get a dog park in the city of Attleboro, and we put it on Seekonk land. Thank you for bringing this in. I'll support it. That concludes my comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? And this is just to receive the new business, but just for everyone's information, my intent with this is if we vote to approve this, I will refer it to the president. I will then send out a memo to everybody standing up a new committee that will consist of Councilor DeSimone, Councilor Angelo, and Councilor Dolan to go through this, to be on this special committee for the dog park. So with this vote, I'll then refer it to myself and then send out a memo and stand up the committee. Any questions on that from a procedure standpoint? All right. Hearing none, this requires a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes.
Thank you.
That concludes the business. I entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned at 10:20. Thank you, everyone.